The chapter opens in Count Vitskaya's house. The two sit facing each other, drinking tea, and Count Vitskaya compliments Vlad, saying you handle the difficult matter well. While taking a sip of tea, he adds he heard it wasn't an easy duel. It's a shame you couldn't find his corpse. Vlad does not answer, and a flashback shows what happened between him and the mysterious knight. Vlad had not actually won, and is taken aback when the mysterious knight asks who are you to be using imperial swordsmanship? Seeing his reaction, the mysterious knight says you look as if you've never heard of it before and asks did you not even know what swordsmanship you were using? The other men are knocked out. The mysterious knight lowers his sword and says looks like we're going to need a long conversation. He decides to leave and tells him wait for me in Tanobo. Then he says honor, or your life, the choice is yours. Back in the present, Vlad replies to Count Vitskaya, I was lucky. Count Vitskaya laughs and says luck was definitely part of it. You wouldn't know how much trouble that bastard caused. Vlad stays silent for a few seconds and answers he was an extremely skilled opponent. Even with the Count's knights who accompanied me, there was no way we could match him. With a serious expression, Vlad says, so that's why you didn't dispatch a knight captain, as you knew that even the finest sword you possessed wouldn't be enough against that unknown raider. Count Vitskaya sets his teacup down and replies, anyone who bears responsibility must always think about what comes after. Vlad asks if he had failed, who were you planning to call in? Count Vitskaya answers the Dragon Killer Knights. Vlad is surprised by the answer, and Count Vitskaya explains to obtain their cooperation you need justification, like a dragon appearing or an enemy of that caliber showing up. Your failure would have been a perfectly good justification, since you're a dragon slayer permitted to bear the Dragon Killer Knight's emblem. Furious, Vlad thinks to himself, so he was going to make use of me completely. The knights following me, and even my death? Count Vitskaya pulls out a pouch and says still, I'm truly relieved you resolved it. The Dragon Killer Knights are not cheap. He tosses it forward and says take this. I put in more than we agreed on. He adds, and since you've already received an invitation from the elves, you won't need my letter of recommendation. This includes payment for that as well. After hearing this and taking the money, Vlad, despite his fury at the way he was treated, decides to leave. As he goes, Count Vitskaya asks, isn't it a waste for you to rot away in the north? While continuing to sip his tea, he says I heard you were exiled. Rather than serving the Lord who threw you away, wouldn't it be better to work for someone who recognizes your value? He promises I can promise you treatment you can't even imagine in that insignificant north. Vlad is furious, a vein standing out on his neck. Then he calms himself with a deep breath and replies, Count, thank you for the offer, but I want a lord I can trust. Count Vitskaya comments what a shame, but Vlad adds still, I feel like we'll meet again someday, leaving the Count puzzled. Vlad releases his power and fixes him with an intimidating stare. Count Vitskaya startles, his hand drops the teacup, and it falls and shatters on the floor. They stare at each other for a long beat, and Vlad then decides to go, thinking to himself because I need to collect a fair price for you deceiving me and the North. The scene shifts to the city's slums. As Vlad walks down the street, someone flicks a pebble at his foot. Vlad turns toward that alley and chooses to take it. He arrives in a dark lane, notices someone, and says no one is following me. From the shadowed alley, a man steps out and asks you, you're not a knight of Vitskaya County, are you? It is the mysterious knight who says, well, if you were their knight, you wouldn't have chosen honor. He asks, shall we have a proper conversation now? The two sit in a tavern and order skewers and something to drink. The mysterious knight tells Vlad not bad. How did you find a place like this? Vlad answers back alleys are always the same, you know. The mysterious knight thinks to himself that Vlad is strange. He carries the dignity of a noble house at a glance. yet he blends into the slums more naturally than anyone. Then he asks Vlad, "Why aren't you asking?" Vlad replies, "Asking what?" "The mysterious knight says my name." Vlad, chewing his meat, answers, "Retired knights don't give their names so easily." Curious, the mysterious knight asks, "How did you know I was retired?" Vlad says, "Because you look exactly like someone I know." He remembers his master and adds, "Your skill and your unhurried air, even the way you look at me." The mysterious knight replies, "You're half correct." He explains, to be precise, it's only those who've become the lowest who are like that. Vlad counters on the lowest road. The honor you're supposed to pick up isn't theft, though. The mysterious knight, staring into the distance, answers, "Indeed. There's still something I haven't finished. Retirement came far earlier than I expected." Then he tells Vlad, "You owe me your life, don't you?" Vlad answers, "Yes." After that, the mysterious knight says, "Then I can collect a fair price." Vlad dislikes the idea but admits that's true. The mysterious knight says, "Anyway, there's a lot I need to ask and a lot that needs doing. So for a while, you'll help me." Vlad asks, "At least let me hear what it is first." The mysterious knight produces some herbs and asks, "Do you know what this is?" Vlad replies, "It's elf tea leaves." But the mysterious knight says this isn't tea. It's a drug. Vlad is shocked. The mysterious knight explains Absalon, in the Empire's language, means elf tea. Its spreading fragrance is fresh enough to make you think of a forest, and the taste on your tongue is sharp enough to brighten your eyes. So word spread among the young nobles in the center. But recently, suicides among noble youths began to increase sharply. He continues, "By the time we learned the cause, it was already too late." Vlad asks, "Does elf tea cause hallucinations or something?" The knight answers, "No. If it had side effects from the start, we would have noticed long ago. But it has high dependency, an awakening effect that's absurdly strong, and a crushing depression that's strong enough to make you harm yourself." He explains, "These days, young people are depressed to begin with. As the Empire's situation loosened, it drove the future pillars onto the battlefield. The old took all the glorious seats, leaving not even opportunities for the young. It was an era where everyone was depressed, so no one noticed that they were already addicted to Absalon." Vlad rightly asks, "Then shouldn't you just ban it by law?" Then he asks, "Now you know the cause, don't you?" The mysterious knight replies, "Young, innocent lads like you won't see it. The dark web that's stretched deep within this world." Vlad seems not to understand, and the knight explains Absalon's interests have sunk roots deep into the Empire, so deep that a few deaths won't stop it. Absalon makes money, and money becomes power. Old power holders are gaining shining gold from young people's deaths. He concludes someone's misery is someone else's happiness and declares, "I'm going to put an end to that." Looking over the city from a hill, Vlad says the old man was right. That slum hasn't existed for long. He adds Tenobo will only grow richer over time, and the Vitskaya family is becoming the new power in the central region. Then he remembers the words of the mysterious knight who told him the territory's people don't get to share those benefits. Many residents are being pushed to the outskirts, where they're forced to produce Absalon. Vlad, with a sad expression, says that's why they resorted to raiding. For every bit of tea leaves they stole, they could save someone. He thinks of the noble and says, "Just like the world I saw in the old man that day." Convinced, he says, "I have to do this." The scene shifts to his room, where several gold coins lie on a table. Vlad confirms there are 20 gold. He adds, "Not quite enough for a life debt. I'll count the rest as resentment." Then he calls his friend Gort. Gort turns surprised, and Vlad shows him 3 gold coins and says, "Your pay." Gort is overjoyed to receive 3 gold coins. Vlad gives him another gold and says, "Use this to pay for our inn and the old man's room next door too." At those words, all his excitement vanishes, and Gort asks why the next room. "Don't tell me we're traveling with him?" Vlad replies, "For a while, yeah." Then Gort asks, "Do you have a horse?" Vlad is stunned. then hands over 3 more gold coins and says to get a decent one. No more than that. Vlad sighs. His pouch is nearly empty after paying everyone, and asks are all lowest ones completely broke? He adds Lord Lamond wandered around without a coin too. He decides to go see Stefan. Gort asks why there. We already paid the rest after coming back. Vlad explains he probably fell out of the Count's favor because of me. I should repay that too. He adds besides, no one ran during the mission. A mercenary group like that is rare. Worth keeping ties with. Gort can only agree. As Vlad leaves, he says we'll leave as soon as I'm back. Gort replies he'll get things ready. Watching him walk away, Gort, looking at his back, says were the boss's shoulders always that broad? When I first met him, he was just a wild punk who knew nothing. Now he really looks like a knight. The scene shifts to the 3 of them camped for the night, sitting by a fire while Gort prepares food. The mysterious knight asks Vlad, you don't know who your master is? Vlad answers, if I did, I would have said already. Back then a sword was at my throat. I came all this way because I want to know too. After his answer, the mysterious knight thinks to himself, you're not lying. Your eyes don't waver at all. Then he tells Vlad this is troublesome. Who could it be? It should never have leaked. Vlad, doubtful, asks, is the style I use really the Imperial Knight swordsmanship? The mysterious knight replies more precisely, it's the Imperial sword. The principle of one strike kill is passed down only to a few even within the Imperial Knights. Vlad is surprised and wonders it was that incredible. Then he asks, then I'm not allowed to use it? The mysterious knight grows serious and asks, by any chance is your father the Emperor? Everyone falls silent for a few seconds until Gort breaks into laughter at such an absurd question. Seeing his reaction, the mysterious knight, still stern, says I'm not joking, so think carefully. Maybe you have imperial blood, or you were extremely close to the royal family. Vlad replies none of that. Meanwhile, Gort keeps laughing. After Vlad's answer, the mysterious knight says then this could become a problem. The principle of one strike kill belongs to the imperial family. He continues, people in the north may not recognize it, but the further south you go, the more people will. Worst case, you could be arrested for insulting the imperial family. Vlad and Gort are taken aback by that. Vlad asks, then what should I do? The mysterious knight answers, well, it's not like there's no way. He explains, from what I can tell, the version you use leaked a long time ago. Vlad, surprised, asks what's different? The mysterious knight explains your swordsmanship is closer to the original form. Vlad is shocked. The knight makes a comparison and says if this bland stew is the version you use, then this is the version the imperial family uses now, as he slices a piece of meat into the bland stew. He stirs it and continues, anything with form changes over time. It's been 300 years since the empire was founded, so the imperial sword has evolved too. It's become more refined, more flavorful. Gort licks his lips while Vlad says then, and the mysterious knight continues, the principle of one strike kill comes from unpredictability. Unpredictability isn't refined rules, but ideas that are mysterious and impossible to foresee. Something wondrous that cannot be predicted beforehand. He tells him to add your own ingredients to your swordsmanship, ingredients that would make even the imperial knights tilt their heads. Those words bring back memories of Vlad's sword master saying it's time to walk alone. Only you can create your own complete world. Then the mysterious knight, showing the bowl of soup with the added meat, says even if you share the same roots, bloom your own flower. That's what this swordsmanship seeks. The scene moves to the elf forest, Ashrina, where men climb stairs that lead to the entrance of a giant tree. We see the elf Avarates tell the guards to open the door. They open it, and Avarates enters the giant tree and is stunned by what he sees. The elf girl who once had a crush on Vlad, and his sword is levitating. An elderly elf says he has finally arrived. Avarades asks the elderly elf, "Is it a revelation?" He replies yes, and adds it has been a long time since I received one. The elf girl begins to tremble, and Avarades asks, "Is this really okay?" The elder replies it will inevitably be a burden. It's the first revelation from the world tree since she became a priestess. The priestess emits a golden energy like a sun, leaving the elders baffled, and begins to say it's coming. A dragon is coming. She sees the dragon's red eye and starts screaming, "What do we do?" The dragon saw us. The elder asks, "Show it to me." But she answers, "No, don't. The dragon is watching." Avarades wants to intervene, but the elder elf tells him, "Don't approach." Then he thinks to himself, "She's still young and inexperienced. I will willingly offer my world instead." His eye begins to glow and a magic circle appears in it. The elder elf starts casting, and a magic circle appears beneath him as he asks, "What should I show?" The priestess answers, "The sword." The elder elf uses magic to show her the sword, and we see it beneath the world tree, a blade driven into the ground, shining like King Arthur's. Far away, unaware of the revelation unfolding in Ashrina, Vlad walks toward a future that is already beginning to move around him. A dragon is coming, an ancient power is awakening, and the path of his sword is no longer his alone. What once seemed like a personal journey is quietly becoming something far greater. As they walk into the forest, Vlad asks the mysterious knight, "But how are you going to stop them? Just because you keep looting caravans doesn't mean the tea won't sell." He adds he heard it's insanely popular in the central region. The knight explains, "Like you said, I can't stop it from selling. That's why I simply smashed the thing head on." Vlad asks, "Smashed what?" The mysterious knight replies, "The beehive." He explains if you can't dig out what's hidden deep inside, you have to lure it out. That's why I used myself as bait to draw out what the Count was hiding. He asks, by the way, did the Count ask the Dragon Killer Knights for help? Vlad answers yes, that's what I heard. After Vlad confirms it, the mysterious knight thinks to himself he asked Dragulia for help directly without going through the Empire. Everything has an order to it, procedures, and he wonders, and besides, did House Vitskaya ever have that kind of influence? Vlad then asks, "Why did you ask about the Dragon Killer Knights?" The knight replies, "It's nothing. Don't try to dig too deep." The mysterious knight adds, "Sometimes just knowing is enough to put your life on the line." Gerda spots something in the distance and tells them it's over there, then asks Vlad, "That's it, right, Captain?" Vlad confirms that's the place. It's a house near a wood. The scene shifts to a refined, sunlit study full of books belonging to an elf where the priestess speaks with Varades, who calls her Holy Maiden. She wants to tell him something, but he is busy writing and ignores her. She asks, "Are you really going to call me Holy Maiden even when it's just the two of us?" And he smiles. She hands him a basket of fruit and says, "When you go, take this with you as well." Varades is surprised and asks where, as if he knows nothing. She answers he looked like he was hungry. Varades asks who. Someone arrives and calls for Varades. He turns, and an elven guard says, "We found humans loitering at the forest boundary." Varades coldly orders drive them out, but the guard replies about that, "The intruders are looking for you, Lord Varades," which surprises him. The guard adds more precisely, "They claim they were invited by you," and Varades is startled because he does not remember inviting anyone, though one of them is Vlad. The guard says he introduced himself as Vlad of Sora. Now Varades understands and turns to the priestess, then asks the guard did he say he was hungry, but the guard does not get his joke. The scene returns to Vlad, whose stomach growls. The three are seated, and hearing it, Gerda asks, "Are you seriously hungry at a time like this?" and then shouts, "You said you were invited." Some moments earlier, while they were approaching the house, the elves had fired arrows in their direction, and Gerda had asked, is it elven etiquette to fire arrows at the person who invited you without a word? But in the present, Vlad replies, it didn't hit us. How was I supposed to know they'd do that? The mysterious knight tells Vlad you still haven't repaid the price of your life, and Vlad points out, but I got you in, didn't I? The knight asks, is the North always this shameless? Vlad thinks to himself, if they were going to do that, then why invite me in the first place? And adds, and besides, they're kind of on edge. Someone opens the prison door. It's Varades, who says, Vlad of Sora, welcome to our forest. Vlad stands and remarks, looks like elves do their welcoming from a jail cell. Varades apologizes for the misunderstanding and hands over the fruit basket prepared by the priestess. Vlad takes the basket and asks, you're not letting us out of here? Varades explains, wait just one day. There are procedures we have to go through. I hope you'll understand. These days, everyone's on edge. Vlad, surprised, asks, it's not because of us, is it? It felt like you were really wary of something. Varades, observing him, thinks to himself, he is someone the holy maiden of the world tree has taken notice of. It might not be a coincidence he came here at a time like this. Then he answers yes, and tells him a dragon is coming, which stuns Vlad. Varades explains, soon the young world tree will be in bloom. The sharpest dragon has always coveted the world tree's potential, and he apologizes for receiving Vlad at such a bad time. Vlad replies, no, it's fine, and asks, is there anything I can do to help? Varades says even just the offer is appreciated and thinks to himself, human souls are light, and their mouths are rotten, beings you can never trust. As Varades reads the inscription on his armor, Vlad, defender of children, thinks to himself, but the spirits surrounding him are speaking. They say this man is the one who has been a protector, and Varades manages to see them all, from the serpent to the sword to the otter. The scene moves to Count Vitskea's house where he drinks his tea, or rather the drug Absalon, and he seems nervous and stammers, why are you here? Dragula answers, didn't you request that I come? Count Vitskea is surprised because he did not expect him and thinks a noble knight, whom even a duke would struggle to invite, is actually coming personally at my request. He wonders what this is. Dragula gives him a hard look. Vitskea jumps up from his armchair, welcomes him, and urges him to sit. He sits, and Count Vitskea asks, would you like at least a cup of tea? And Dragula replies, the elf tea doesn't suit my taste. Vitskea apologizes at once and says, of course, it isn't worthy of someone as esteemed as you. Then he turns to a servant and shouts, bring black tea, the finest grade grown in the southern archipelago. But Dragula says tea won't be necessary, and when Vitskea asks if he wants wine, he cuts him off and goes straight to the point, saying, more importantly, is Absalon being produced properly? I received a report about an unknown attacker. Count Vitskea answers yes, it was resolved, so production is continuing without any issues. Dragula, surprised, asks, without any issues, wasn't it said there was a skilled fighter that even the knights here couldn't handle on their own? Count Vitskea replies, yes, that was true, but by good fortune we were able to receive help from an outsider. Dragula is taken aback as Vitskea explains a knight from the north came, someone called Vlad, and Dragula is shocked to hear the name. Count Vitskea continues, a dog abandoned by Bayezid, but the brat had real skill. Still, he was a northerner, so his manners were awful. He spoke without knowing his place. A barbarian's blood can never hide itself. Lowly blood always shows itself, wherever it is. Dragula asks, did he truly look that way to you? Count Vitskea does not understand, and Dragula continues, blood that shows no matter where you look. He stares menacingly and asks, that bloodline you claim you recognized. The Count is terrified, and Dragula concludes, did it really look lowly to you? Vlad reveals the amber embedded in his sword to the elder elf. The air in the room seems to still as the elder leans in, his ancient eyes widening with genuine impression. The mysterious knight stands by Vlad's side. The elder elf looks Vlad in the eye and tells him that he is truly a rare guest to have found his way into these secluded lands. With a voice laced with curiosity, he asks Vlad where he could have possibly obtained such a rare artifact. Vlad, maintaining a respectful but firm tone, explains that he was told this amber is a cherished heirloom belonging to the Hainel family. The name Hainel seems to echo through the chamber. The elder elf falls into a deep, heavy silence, his mind drifting back through centuries of memory. He repeats the name softly, testing its weight, until a spark of realization finally ignites. Yes, he breathes, the swordmaster. Vlad is visibly taken aback, his breath catching in his throat as he hears that legendary title. The weight of his own weapon suddenly feels different. The elder begins to weave a tale of the past, explaining that one of the knights who once followed the great swordmaster bore that very surname. He speaks of a man he remembers vividly, a warrior with eyes as clear as glass and hair the color of sorrowful water. Driven by a growing sense of destiny, Vlad presses further, asking if the elder knows the location of the maple tree trapped within the amber's golden depths. The question strikes the elder like a physical blow. Surprised, he asks how a mere human could know that the scene inside is a maple tree. He observes Vlad with a piercing, analytical gaze. To himself, the elder muses that while the amber sparkles with the brilliance of starlight, it contains a world not permitted to humans. He wonders how this boy managed to glimpse a reality that should be invisible to his kind. Vlad feels the atmosphere shift. He realizes his words have sent a shockwave through the gathered elven elders. Internally, he debates his next move, wondering just how much of the truth he should reveal. He senses that lying in this sacred place would be a grave mistake. However, the elder elf sets his suspicions aside for the moment. He reveals the tragic truth. The maple tree engraved inside the gem was once located in the west, in what was the greenest, most vibrant forest on the entire continent. Vlad is stunned, pointing out that the west is widely known as a desolate wasteland. With a voice full of regret, the elder confirms that it was once their home, Elvenheim. That was until a catastrophic red dragon descended from the skies, turning the lush paradise into a sea of fire and reducing their legacy to ash. As night falls, the scene shifts to Vlad's private quarters. He sits in the dim light, his mind racing with the elder's revelations. He sighs heavily, wondering what their next move should be. How are they supposed to find a landmark that has been erased from the map? His brooding is interrupted by the mysterious knight, who enters with his sword in hand, nonchalantly announcing his intent to go and examine the Tuzan leaves. Vlad reminds him that the elves ordered him to stay confined to his room, but the knight just brushes the warning aside. He tells Vlad to simply cover for him if anyone asks. The knight approaches the window, his movements fluid and confident. He assures a skeptical Vlad that he won't get caught, reminiscing about how he pulled stunts like this constantly in his younger days. Vlad watches him, clearly doubting the knight's stealth skills, but the knight has one more piece of information to share before he departs. He leans in, speaking of Vlad's master. He reveals that, based on everything he has seen, it is certain that the master is connected to the imperial family. He explains the legend of the founding king, Prausen, who famously stepped down from his glorious throne to become the lowest one. This act of humility was the first step in a legend that has endured for hundreds of years. However, just as his rise was magnificent, his end was shrouded in mystery and carefully concealed from history. The knight suggests that Vlad is the missing link to Prausen's unknown final chapter. Vlad sighs, feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders, and mutters that the trail ends here since the forest is gone. But the knight just smiles. To him, this isn't the end, it's just the beginning. He tells Vlad that if his master truly inherited Prausen's will, then it is Vlad's destiny to follow the traces he left behind. When Vlad argues that no human knows of Prausen's final moments, the knight leaves him with a chilling thought. Humans might not know, but the elves, who live for millennia, just might. With a flash of movement, the knight vanishes into the trees, leaving Vlad to remark on his cat-like speed. Left to his own thoughts, Vlad realizes the knight's logic is sound. The elves are the keepers of ancient secrets, and the elder did recognize the scene in the amber. He begins to wonder if the mysterious voice he hears also saw this place through the gem rather than in person. His head begins to ache from the complexity of it all, and he eventually gives up on the mental gymnastics, wondering what kind of person his master really was. Suddenly, a soft knock at the door breaks his solitude. It is the priestess. She asks if he has a moment, and soon the two are walking through the elven settlement. Vlad feels the heavy awkwardness of the situation, wishing he had stayed in his room, especially with two elven guards following them and burning holes in his back with their glares. When he finally asks where they are going, the priestess reveals her intent. She wants to show the amber to the world tree. She explains that the world tree has never seen its mother since the day it was born, and it yearns for that connection. Vlad is floored. The maple tree in his amber is the mother of the world tree itself. The priestess adds that the world tree is preparing for its first spring bloom and was filled with anxiety until Vlad arrived, carrying the precious memory of its lineage. They reach a massive, ancient wall of flora that looks like a dead end. The priestess explains that this is a sacred, secret place that no one can enter without an invitation from the world tree itself. As she places her hand on the bark, the wood groans and shifts, the branches parting to reveal a hidden passage. Vlad stands in awe of the magic unfolding before him. The priestess turns to him and officially welcomes Vlad of Sora, noting that he is the first human in history to be granted entry into this sanctum. After a silent nod of approval from the guards, Vlad steps inside. The moment he enters, the tree seems to vibrate, its leaves rustling in a way that feels like a warm greeting. The priestess smiles, noting that the tree seems happy he came. Vlad can only stare in wonder, whispering the name of the legendary entity, the world tree. But the wonder of the sanctuary stands in grim contrast to the horror unfolding on the outskirts of the forest. The scene shifts to the woods, where the bodies of elven warriors lie scattered and broken. One elf is shown with a sickening, scorched hole through his chest. Emerging from the shadows, the dragon makes its presence known, its eyes fixed on the elven village as it moves in for the kill, ready to finish what it started centuries ago. The moment he enters, the tree seems to vibrate, its leaves rustling in a way that feels like a warm greeting. The priestess smiles, noting that the tree seems happy he came. Vlad can only stare in wonder, whispering the name of the legendary entity, the world tree. But the wonder of the sanctuary stands in grim contrast to the horror unfolding on the outskirts of the forest. The scene shifts to the woods, where the bodies of elven warriors lie scattered and broken. One elf is shown with a sickening, scorched hole through his chest. Emerging from the shadows, the dragon makes its presence known, its eyes fixed on the elven village as it moves in for the kill, ready to finish what it started centuries ago. Luminous butterflies begin to flutter before Vlad's eyes, and he wonders what is happening as the shimmering creatures swarm around him. Immersed in the ethereal beauty of the world tree, he is interrupted by the priestess. She asks if he is ready to show the artifact to the tree, urging him to become the passage that connects the two worlds. They share an intense, silent look before Vlad agrees. He grips his weapon, sinks to his knees, and presents the blade to the world tree. The butterflies begin to glow brighter than ever, several of them diving toward the amber. The priestess kneels before Vlad, and his sword, as if in deep prayer. As the brilliant swarm converges on the gem, the butterflies form the shape of a hand, the hand of the world tree itself, which reaches out to touch the amber. The butterflies have manifested a physical body for the world tree, allowing her to finally make contact with Vlad's sword. The amber radiates a blinding light, and Vlad finds himself suddenly transported into the world within the gem, a realm filled with vibrant autumn leaves. The new world tree turns toward her mother and offers a tender smile before dissolving back into a cloud of butterflies. Vlad watches the scene in awe, his hands never letting go of his sword. As the butterflies return to the original world tree, a voice speaks of the countless possibilities the tree has been holding, the little ones, forgotten under a single name, that are finally starting to bloom. Flowers begin to glow and blossom, and from their petals, the original world tree appears. The new world tree looks like a mere child in comparison, gazing with pure admiration at her mother, who smiles back at her. Finally, the daughter is able to embrace her mother, their faces overflowing with the joy of their long-awaited reunion. Outside the sanctum, the effects of this rare event are visible to everyone. The elven elders stand in a state of shock. The Grand Elder begins to weep with happiness as he watches the world tree shine with unprecedented brilliance, whispering about how long he has waited for this exact moment. They are not the only witnesses. Young elves look on in wonder at a sight they have never seen before. Varades pauses his work to stare at the horizon, as do the laborers and the soldiers. Vlad's horse, Gerda, watches alongside the mysterious knight, who had gone off to find elven tea but now turns his gaze toward the glowing world tree. It is said that if a young world is being born, someone must be there to protect it. That is why the knight with the blue eyes never stops gripping his sharp blade. The crimson descending upon the earth is the knight's gift for the children being born this very day. From the newly bloomed flowers, small animals begin to emerge: foxes, rabbits, and tiny birds. A tearful elder remarks that, at long last, spring has finally come to Ashrina. Back in the sanctuary, Vlad remains on his knees, his hands bloodied from holding the sharp edge of the sword to ensure the amber remained exposed until the very end. The priestess approaches him and gently touches his wounded hands, asking if he is all right. Vlad looks up and asks if the flowers have bloomed. She confirms they have, adding that the trees are saying thank you. Vlad lets out a heavy sigh of relief, muttering that it's a relief. The priestess looks downcast, apologizing for the injuries to his hands, but Vlad quickly reassures her. He tells her it is okay and that it was his choice to hold on. Despite the pain and the cuts, Vlad looks happy. Remembering the image of the mother and daughter embracing, he explains that he simply didn't want to interrupt their moment. The priestess is caught off guard by his words, surprised that a human was actually able to witness the spiritual event. Vlad notes that the amber has disappeared, feeling a brief moment of sadness as he recalls that it was a treasure of House Hainel. However, his attention is quickly diverted by a hidden passage opening beneath the world tree. The priestess realizes what is happening, noting that the tree must think it is okay to show itself to him. Inside the passage, an intense light shines from a weapon. Vlad is shocked by what he sees. He senses a lofty, divine light coming from the sword, but at the same time, it gives him the creeps. It feels as though the blade is raising its edge specifically toward him. An enormous sword appears to be pointing directly at his chest. Suddenly, Vlad is pulled into the world of the sword. His hands are still bleeding as he stands before a pool where the weapon rests, glowing fiercely. A voice commands him not to come any closer. A man materializes from the light, calling Vlad a little thing that cannot even open its eyes yet. He tells Vlad to disappear from his sight before he is cut down, leveling the blade at him. Vlad snaps back to the real world, trembling. The priestess, startled by his reaction, asks if he is okay and what is wrong. Vlad turns to her, pointing at the passage and asking what that sword is. She informs him that it is the swordmaster's sword. Vlad is stunned, asking why such a thing would be here. She explains that the swordmaster was the one who gave it to the elves, noting that while the Empire is considered evil, the swordmaster himself was kind. As Vlad tries to process this, the priestess explains that the weapon is a guardian sword that once protected a life, and a sword of blood that has massacred countless enemies. It is the dragon-slaying sword that once pierced the heart of the prime dragon of perfection. Now, it stands as a talisman guarding the world tree. When Vlad asks what it is supposed to be guarding the tree from, the priestess watches him for a moment before giving her answer. It guards against those who seek to pry into the world tree's possibilities, specifically, every dragon in this world. The silence of the night is shattered by a cold, lethal instinct. As Vlad lies asleep in his chambers, a familiar chill washes over him. The unmistakable presence of the swordmaster's blade, its tip leveled inches from his throat. His eyes snap, open only to meet the piercing gaze of the knight he encountered in the world tree's hidden sanctuary. The knight's voice is a low growl of pure disdain as he demands to know if he didn't already tell Vlad to vanish from his sight. Before Vlad can even draw a breath to respond, the knight drives the steel deep into his chest. Vlad bolts upright in bed, gasping for air, his heart hammering against his ribs as the nightmare dissolves into the shadows of the room. Drenched in a cold sweat, Vlad realizes that the suffocating sensation wasn't a mere trick of the mind. It was a visceral, unmistakable warning directed specifically at him. He reflects on the knight's presence, recalling a hatred so sharp and unsettling that it felt bottomless, a malice so deep he couldn't see its end. As he wipes the perspiration from his brow, a single question haunts him. Why is such pure, concentrated animosity being directed toward him? At that moment, the mysterious knight enters the room, his keen eyes immediately catching Vlad's distressed state. He asks if a nightmare was the cause of his sudden awakening. His gaze then shifts to Vlad's hands, questioning if he can even move them in their current state. He scoffs at the sight, wondering what kind of lunatic would wrap bandages in such a haphazard, amateur way. Vlad remains silent, unable to offer a defense because, deep down, he knows the knight is absolutely right. Seeking to steer the conversation away from his own failures, Vlad asks for an update on the investigation. The mysterious knight reveals a troubling discovery. The tea fields are strictly divided. He explains that the tea leaves destined for human consumption are kept entirely separate from the ones the elves use themselves. When Vlad suggests that this could simply be a logistical choice for trade, the knight counters that he initially thought the same. However, the two varieties are subtly, yet fundamentally different. This wasn't an accident. There was a deliberate, calculated intent from the very beginning. The weight of these words leaves Vlad stunned. The mysterious knight continues, noting that this separation stems from a deep-seated malice toward humanity. In his eyes, this is the Empire's original sin. He explains that the elves' current hostility toward humans is a direct consequence of the Empire's past atrocities. Beneath the gilded surface of the brilliantly shining Empire lie the blood and tears of countless victims, and much of that blood belonged to the elves. To them, humans are no different from the dragon that once reduced their forest to ashes. The history lesson grows even darker. While it was the prime dragon of perfection who burned the world tree in the distant past, it was the Empire that ultimately drove the elves out of their ancestral lands. Vlad is left reeling from the revelation. Internally, the mysterious knight senses the situation spiraling into complexity, caught between a crumbling empire and a newly blossoming world tree. He warns Vlad that eventually, the Empire will be forced to reap the seeds of the original sin it has scattered across history, whether it is ready for the harvest or not. Sometime later, the priestess arrives to tend to Vlad's injuries. She fumbles with the knots of his bandages, frustrated that they won't come undone. Vlad winces in pain, pleading with her to be more gentle this time. noting that the circulation has been cut off so tightly his fingers are starting to change color. The priestess, however, isn't in a sympathetic mood. She snaps back, asking why he was holding his sword the wrong way in the first place. Vlad tries to defend himself, asking how he could have possibly predicted such a disastrous outcome. The priestess remains unimpressed, stating that people who rely on excuses don't inspire much confidence. When Vlad retorts that she should have warned him about the dangers beforehand, she admits that it was her first time performing the blossom ceremony as well. Nearby, Gerda, the mysterious knight, and the priestess's elven guards watch the bickering in awkward silence, looking as though they are caught in the middle of a lover's spat. Finally, she manages to strip away the old bandages and begins searching through her medicine box, pulling out various vials. Vlad, watching her uncertain movements, asks if she has ever actually performed this procedure before. She insists that everything is fine, claiming she once saw someone else do it from a distance. She flashes him a bright smile, but Vlad's internal monologue is screaming that this is absolutely not fine. She asks to see his palms, and despite his hesitation, Vlad relents. He reveals two deep, jagged cuts earned from the sheer force of gripping his sword. The priestess softens for a moment, acknowledging that the wounds must have been painful. Vlad dismisses the pain, admitting it's simply embarrassing for a knight to be wounded by his own weapon. But the priestess takes his hands firmly, telling him it is a mark of pride, a scar earned while ensuring the world tree could bloom once more. She prepares a purple potion provided by the elders, but as she holds the vial, her hand begins to shake uncontrollably. The tremors quickly seize her entire body. Vlad asks if she is all right, but before she can answer, a surge of overwhelming energy strikes him. Visions flash before his eyes in a chaotic blur, a grotesque dragon, a shimmering white beast, and finally, the name Drigulia echoes through his mind. The priestess's eyes ignite with an ethereal glow as she realizes the threat has arrived. The scene shifts violently to the heart of the forest, where a monstrous dragon is tearing through the elven defenses. With a single, devastating swipe of its claws, it pulverizes the elven warriors. The beast continues its relentless slaughter, carving a path of destruction toward the world tree. One of the soldiers screams out to Varades that Nidhogg is far larger and more terrifying than they had ever imagined. Varades prepares his bow, his voice steady as he commands his troops to hold the line. They cannot fall back. They must buy enough time for the three mages to complete the formation of the magic circle. Fueled by desperation and duty, the elven soldiers form a wall of shields and spears, shouting their defiance. The dragon charges with primal ferocity. As it nears the line, four elves leap into the air, drawing their strings to unleash a volley of arrows. The dragon barely acknowledges them, its armored scales deflecting the projectiles as if they were nothing more than rain. The elves are struck with horror, wondering how any living thing could be so impervious to their assault. One warrior spots a potential weakness. The dragon's neck appears exposed. He screams for the others to strike, and they plunge their weapons toward the gap. To their shock, the blades fail to even scratch the skin. The dragon stares them down with a gaze of pure, predatory arrogance before lunging forward to crush them. Suddenly, a streak of magical light pierces the chaos. An arrow infused with immense power strikes the dragon directly in the eye, finally drawing blood. The beast erupts in a deafening scream of agony. Varades stands his ground, his eyes glowing with an intense, magical light as a complex circle forms within his iris. He declares that a new possibility, only just born into this world, will not be stolen away by the greed of monsters. He draws his bow to its limit, a massive, shimmering magic circle manifesting before him as he prepares to unleash a strike that will decide the fate of the forest. The dragon looms over the battlefield, its gaze heavy with a crushing sense of superiority. To this ancient predator, the warriors below are nothing more than insignificant ants, barely worth the effort of a thought. It maintains this arrogant posture even though a jagged arrow is buried deep within its right eye, the wound weeping a steady stream of dark blood. That single, lucky strike stands as the only blow that has managed to pierce its near-impenetrable hide. As the beast shifts its focus, Its piercing glare settles on the elven soldiers. The sheer pressure of its presence causes them to break into a cold sweat. Their courage fails them, and they are gripped by a primal terror that leaves them paralyzed where they stand. However, the tide seems to shift as the elven mages stationed behind the front lines complete their incantations. Glowing runes ignite in the air, and they scream for the soldiers to fall back immediately, announcing that the magic circle is finally ready. As the infantry scrambles to safety, several massive, interlocking magic arrays manifest directly above the dragon's head. For a brief moment, the creature looks genuinely surprised, its reptilian eyes widening as it finds itself caught within the epicenter of a massive trap. From each of the glowing circles, the raw, undiluted power of the elements begins to pour forth. Fire, lightning, and wind swirl together in a violent cacophony of destruction. From their position further back, the elven mages activate the final stage of the spell, and all three elements strike the dragon simultaneously. The resulting explosion is cataclysmic, a pillar of white-hot energy that illuminates the entire forest as if the sun had suddenly descended to the earth. Virates, standing at the edge of the devastation, is forced to shield his face with his arm against the suffocating wall of dust and debris kicked up by the blast. He stares intensely into the heart of the wreckage, his heart hammering against his ribs. He cannot yet tell if the gambit was successful, desperately asking himself if they actually managed to take the monster down. But as the thick shroud of dust begins to dissipate, a terrifying sight emerges. Through the haze, the dragon's left eye suddenly ignites with a malevolent, crimson glow. The beast stands perfectly still, completely unscathed. The combined elemental fury of the elven elite has done absolutely nothing. The dragon is perfectly fine. Behind Virates, the mages are frozen in a state of absolute shock. They realize with mounting dread that there is barely any damage to the creature. They whisper in disbelief that the beast is a fully grown adult, possessing a magic resistance so high that their most powerful spells are little more than a nuisance. The soldiers turn to Virates with eyes full of despair, reporting that their physical weapons, their arrows and their swords, are proving just as useless against those reinforced scales. They plead with their commander, asking if they should retreat now and regroup with the main elven force. Virates, however, does not move. Instead, he drops into a low, aggressive combat stance, and a terrifying aura of power begins to radiate from his body. He declares with iron resolve that they will end the fight right here. He refuses to fall back, stating firmly that they cannot allow the sacred world tree to be used as a shield. He barks an order to his remaining men, telling everyone to get ready. He has spotted a potential opening. If they can coordinate their movements and strike specifically at the dragon's right blind spot, the eye they managed to wound earlier, they might still have a chance to subdue it. As the soldiers steel themselves for a final, desperate stand, Virates draws his bow, the strings singing with tension. Behind him, the mages frantically begin the process of recharging their mana for one last strike. Virates narrows his eyes, focusing entirely on the dragon's movements, telling himself that he only needs one more opening. But just as he prepares to loose his arrow, the world changes. Behind the elven lines, the world tree begins to pulse with an ethereal, blinding light. The soldiers are left in total shock, staring at the sudden brilliance and wondering what is happening to their sacred source of life. Virates spins around, looking toward the great tree, and he senses a new, terrifying presence. Another dragon is fast approaching, heading directly for the heart of the forest. This new arrival was heralded by a shimmering light reflected in the first dragon's eye, a silent signal between predators. With the path clear and the elite soldiers entirely occupied with the first beast, the second dragon advances toward the world tree without a single obstacle in its way. The scene shifts abruptly to Vlad's private chambers, where the atmosphere is thick with tension. The priestess is there, but she is a shadow of her usual composed self. She is trembling uncontrollably, her voice shaking with a raw terror as she pleads for help, repeating over and over that a dragon is coming. Vlad is caught off guard by her vulnerability, realizing with a jolt that the crisis is happening right now, in this very second. One of the priestess's elite guards steps forward to explain the gravity of the situation. He tells Vlad that this is a revelation, a divine vision. He explains that the world tree possesses a sight that transcends the limits of any mortal being, and it delivers these visions exclusively through the priestess, who serves as the living link between the tree and the elven people. The guard's voice is heavy as he continues, stating that a revelation from the world tree must never be ignored. He looks directly at Vlad, noting that for the tree to ask a human for help means it has seen a glimmer of hope only through him. Vlad is rocked by the weight of these words. Both guards then drop to their knees and bow deeply before him, begging him to protect this newly blossomed possibility. As the priestess catches his hand, her face wet with tears as she sobs for his aid, Vlad feels a wave of deep sadness. He wonders to himself what a person is even supposed to do in a moment of such overwhelming responsibility. In search of guidance, he turns toward the mysterious knight, but the veteran warrior simply scoffs at him. The knight asks Vlad why he is looking to him for answers, reminding the boy that he is not his lord or his senior officer. This cold rejection acts as a wake-up call. Hearing this, Vlad realizes the ultimate truth. In this moment, the only person who has the authority to give him orders is himself. He reaches down, gently wipes the tears from the priestess's face, and tells her to stop her crying. With a new, cold fire of determination burning in his eyes, he declares that he, Vlad of Sora, will fulfill his duty as a knight. Meanwhile, back in the elven village, the second dragon has arrived, and it is a scene of pure carnage. A lone soldier tries to stop its advance, but is crushed underfoot like a dry leaf as the beast marches toward the world tree. It moves with an inarrestable momentum, killing anyone who crosses its path. Normal citizens flee in a blind, screaming panic, but the dragon is too fast. It rounds a corner and closes in on a terrified family with a young elven child. As the beast prepares to deliver a deadly, incinerating strike, a massive magic circle suddenly erupts from the ground, creating a wall of force that blocks the dragon and saves the family. The enormous barrier successfully halts the dragon's progress, and the great elder of the elves emerges from the chaos. He shouts for everyone to run immediately, and the citizens feel a surge of relief at the sight of their leader taking action. The elder doesn't waste a second, ordering his warriors to quickly reform their front lines. The soldiers obey instantly, locking their shields and bracing their spears at his command. The dragon snarls and slams its massive claws against the magical circle. To the horror of the gathered elves, the talons don't bounce off. They begin to sink into the barrier as if it were soft clay. The mages are aghast, whispering that their magic is being bypassed so easily. The great elder realizes the grim reality of their foe. These creatures are remnants of a perfect dragon, meaning they possess a fundamental connection to the world and will not be easily deceived by magic that attempts to trick reality. He urgently orders the mages to layer their circles, but the dragon's power is simply overwhelming. It lets out a deafening, earth-shaking roar and shatters every barrier surrounding it in a single flex of its power. The magical backlash is violent. The great elder is thrown back and falls to his knees, spitting blood. He laments to himself that in his weakened, withered state, he cannot even hold the monster back. The soldiers rush to his side, begging him to escape with the other elders while they try to hold the line, but the elder knows they won't survive a single exchange. Just as total despair begins to set in, a blinding light erupts from the side, catching both the elves and the dragon by surprise. Out of the radiance, the mysterious knight appears. He looks up at the towering, monstrous dragon and casually remarks that the creature is really damn ugly. His sword begins to hum, glowing with a concentrated, intense mana. He then turns his gaze toward Vlad, who has approached the dragon from the other side, his own blade wreathed in a swirling vortex of power. The knight asks Vlad if he doesn't agree with his assessment. The dragon finally notices Vlad standing there, the young man's eye glowing brighter than it ever has before as he prepares to deliver a killing blow. Only moments before the current chaos, Vlad and the mysterious knight are seen sprinting across the rooftops of the elven city. Below them, the dragon is a force of pure, unbridled devastation, carving a path toward the world tree and slaughtering every living soul in its trajectory. The air is thick with the copper scent of blood and the screams of the innocent. As the Great Elder finally manifests his massive magic circle to halt the beast's progress and allow the civilians to flee, Vlad watches in awe. The mysterious knight briefly pauses, explaining that what they are seeing is pure magic, remarking with a grim satisfaction that the Elder's intervention has finally bought them the time they desperately need. Immediately following his words, the mysterious knight begins to release his own hidden power. Vlad watches, transfixed, as the man's right eye starts to glow with an intense, otherworldly light. Confused and intimidated by the sudden shift in the atmosphere, Vlad wonders to himself what is happening with the strange aura manifesting in the knight's right eye. He cannot help but ask out loud what the older warrior is doing. The knight calmly explains his unique visual prowess, stating that his right eye holds reality while his left eye holds his world. He tells Vlad that when his vision encompasses both at once, he becomes capable of seeing things others cannot. When Vlad asks for clarification on what exactly he is supposed to see, the knight responds with a chilling confidence, claiming his specialty is seeing the truth that remains desperately hidden behind a veil of lies. The mysterious knight then fully opens his eye, activating the legendary Byakugan of the Hyuga clan. As he does so, a tidal wave of spiritual power expands in every direction, sweeping across the battlefield until it reaches the dragon. The knight begins to systematically scan the creature's massive frame with his specialized vision. Internally, he searches for the one thing that can turn the tide, the flaw that the beast doesn't want exposed, the fatal weakness that would allow them to put it down for good with a single, decisive strike. After a tense moment of observation, he finds it. He shouts to Vlad, directing him to target the foreleg, specifically the armpit hidden just beneath the membrane of the wing. He promises to draw the dragon's attention, leaving Vlad with the critical task of striking that exact spot. The perspective shifts back to the heat of the moment where Vlad finds himself at point-blank range with the dragon. Harnessing every ounce of his latent power, Vlad lunges forward and strikes with everything he has. The impact creates a monumental explosion that sends a massive plume of dust spiraling into the air. Watching from a distance, the mysterious knight is momentarily relieved, believing Vlad has done it and delivered a perfect strike. However, the words die in his throat. His eyes widen in absolute shock as the dust clears to reveal a horrifying sight. The dragon has parried Vlad's attack. The strike, which should have been lethal, did absolutely nothing to the beast because it managed to deflect the blow using its massive, armored tail. Vlad stands there, frozen in a state of pure disbelief. The dragon lets out a deafening roar of fury before swinging its massive paw at Vlad. The young warrior narrowly manages to dodge the first swipe, and as the dragon follows up with a second crushing blow, Vlad's reflexes save him once again. But as he backpedals to regain his footing, he loses his balance for a split second. It is all the opening the beast needs. The dragon's enormous limb connects squarely with Vlad, catching him in a direct hit and sending him hurtling through the air. Even though Vlad managed to brace himself by infusing his sword with his aura, the sheer physical force of the impact is overwhelming. As he struggles to stand, Vlad looks back through the haze of dust to see the dragon's crimson eyes glowing like embers in the dark. He realizes with a sinking feeling that he is in deep trouble. He notes that the sword in his hand is trembling, thinking to himself that this creature is on a completely different level compared to Lindblom. This is the true, terrifying power of a fully matured dragon. The beast doesn't give him a moment to breathe, charging toward him with a murderous intent that makes it look like a moving mountain compared to the young knight. Seeing Vlad in such a desperate situation, the mysterious knight decides he can no longer stay on the sidelines. He sprints toward the fray, catching the dragon's attention. He charges forward with his sword infused with a violent aura, still utilizing the piercing vision of the Hyuga clan's Byakugan to track the beast's movements. The dragon turns its head, snarling with a primal rage, its eyes burning bright red as it prepares to deal with the new interloper. The knight's special vision alerts him to a sudden movement. He sees that the dragon has launched its sharp, blade-like fins directly at him. Thanks to the Byakugan, he is able to track the projectiles as they travel at supersonic speeds, twisting his body to dodge the first few. But the dragon, sensing his agility, increases the volume of the barrage. The knight is forced to use his sword to parry the incoming fins, but the sheer number makes it impossible to evade them all perfectly. One of the razor-sharp fins strikes him directly in the left arm, the force of the blow throwing him backward. Vlad cries out for the old man, but he has no time to check on his companion as the dragon suddenly appears directly behind him. Vlad spins around, the shadow of the beast looming over him, and realizes with a jolt of terror that he is too late to defend himself. Fortunately, the great elder intervenes just in time, manifesting a magic circle between Vlad and the dragon. However, the dragon's strength is so immense that its strike shatters the magical barrier like glass. The force of the impact still reaches Vlad, throwing him several meters across the ground. The great elder takes the brunt of the magical backlash, coughing up blood as his strength begins to fail. Seeing that its two main irritants are no longer an immediate threat, the dragon loses interest and turns its sights back toward the world tree. The beast continues its march, looking down at the elven soldiers in its path as if they were mere insects. To the soldiers, the dragon is an unstoppable god. They can do nothing but watch as a massive foot descends upon them, crushing them into the earth. Meanwhile, the mysterious knight manages to reach Vlad, who is lying unconscious on the ground with half of his armor shattered. The knight shakes him, telling him to get a hold of himself. Vlad finally regains consciousness, gasping for air as his lungs fill with oxygen once more. The knight encourages him, noting that he only survived that last hit thanks to the Grand Elder's defensive magic. To Vlad's surprise, his chest begins to emit a soft, pulsing light. The knight asks if he can move and if anything is broken. Vlad admits that while he's taken a beating, he is all right, and he asks the old man the same. The knight reveals that he barely avoided a direct hit himself, but he can still swing his sword a few more times if necessary. With a sudden, heavy seriousness, the knight asks Vlad if he can keep fighting. Vlad takes a moment to assess his own state, realizing that the blessing from the white serpent still remains within him, even if it has grown faint. His sword is warped and bent from the pressure, but it hasn't lost its sharpness. He tells the knight that he can do it, that he can probably hold out for one more exchange. The mysterious knight nods, telling him that they need to end this with their next strike before the beast reaches the summit. They look up to see a gruesome sight. The dragon has already sunk its massive claws into the bark of the world tree and has begun its ascent. Below the creature, elven warriors are seen skewered upon the dragon's fins, their bodies dangling as the beast climbs. The dragon, now drenched in the blood of the elves, continues its climb toward the canopy. With its predatory gaze, it spots the spirits of the world tree, who are shimmering with a visible, trembling fear. Instead of pity, the dragon simply licks its lips at the sight of its prey and lets out a roar so powerful it shakes the very foundations of the forest. The air is thick with the copper scent of blood and the suffocating heat of lingering dragon fire as Vlad and the mysterious knight finally stir. They pull themselves from the debris, their vision clearing just in time to witness a nightmare. As they move toward the massive, scaled form of the dragon, the true scale of the devastation becomes undeniable. The beast has moved through the elven ranks like a scythe through wheat, leaving a trail of broken bodies in its wake. Vlad surveys the carnage, his voice heavy with a mix of horror and disbelief as he observes that they were all taken out. Every warrior, every defender, silenced. Yet, as they press deeper into the clearing, a flicker of hope remains. Amidst the sea of fallen soldiers, the elder elves remain standing, their spirits battered but their bodies still drawing breath. The mysterious knight pauses, his gaze sweeping over the survivors as he echoes Vlad's grim realization, noting that while the rank and file were indeed all taken out, the leadership persists. He quickly shifts his focus from the dead to the living threat, tilting his head back to track the dragon's progress. The beast is no longer on the forest floor, it has begun its ascent. He remarks that, by the way, the creature has already climbed incredibly high. With a calculating look, he turns to Vlad and asks a question that seems almost absurd given the circumstances. Can he climb trees? Vlad, his grip tightening on his weapon, responds with the sharp edge of someone facing an apocalypse, asking if such a question is even important right now. The mysterious knight doesn't take offense, simply nodding as he admits that Vlad has a point. He explains that no matter how skilled a climber one might be, a human can never hope to catch up to a creature of that magnitude once it gains momentum. Vlad watches the dragon's claws sink into the ancient bark of the world tree, his mind racing through 100 failed scenarios. With a grim, serious expression, he asks what their next move should be. But before a plan can even be articulated, the ground beneath them begins to hum with a violent, rhythmic energy. A vibrant, emerald-green magic circle erupts from the soil, bathing Vlad and the mysterious knight in a blinding light that catches them both completely off guard. The source of this power is the Elder Elves. They have linked their life forces, channeling their remaining mana into a singular, desperate incantation. At the center of the circle stands the Great Elder, his face pale and his body trembling under the immense pressure of the spell. Blood begins to stream from his nose, a clear sign that he is pushing his physical vessel past its breaking point. He looks directly at Vlad, his eyes filled with a heavy, ancient expectation. He tells Vlad that he is counting on him, addressing him as the knight who carries the memory of the world tree. It is a plea, a command, and a sacrifice all in one. Suddenly, the earth groans as massive, enchanted trees sprout from the magic circle with impossible speed. These are not natural growths. They are pillars of living wood that surge upward like spears aimed at the heavens. Vlad and the mysterious knight find themselves standing atop this rising forest, propelled into the sky. The knight lets out a shout of grim triumph, declaring that the plan worked and telling Vlad to get ready. The Elder Elves continue to pour their very souls into the art of wood, forcing the magical trees to chase the dragon's path. They are closing the gap, soaring alongside the trunk of the world tree while the dragon continues its climb, seemingly indifferent to the gnats rising from below. But the cost of such high-tier magic is immediate and brutal. The Great Elder's strength finally gives out, and he collapses to the ground, the backlash of the spell ravaging his internal organs. Without his constant guidance, the magical structure begins to fail. Vlad looks down, watching in horror as the bark beneath his feet starts to crack and dissolve into shimmering dust. He shouts that the magic is breaking and realizes that at this rate, they will fall long before they reach their target. The mysterious knight, however, has seen enough. He declares that they have been carried far enough and prepares to take the ultimate gamble. Using the final, crumbling remnants of the Elder's tree as a springboard, he ignores the instability and launches himself with a roar. He becomes a blur of steel and intent, hurtling through the air with enough force to bridge the gap. He lands squarely on the dragon's massive, shifting back, his boots finding purchase between the jagged scales. Immediately, he channels his aura into his blade, causing the steel to glow with a searing, white-hot intensity. The dragon, sensing a foreign weight, twists its head back, its reptilian eyes widening in genuine surprise at the audacity of the human. The knight doesn't give it a second to recover. Calling the dragon a foul bastard, He brings his blade down in a devastating arc across the creature's tail. The dragon's roar of agony shakes the very foundations of the world tree as the knight's strike nearly severs the massive appendage entirely. The knight uses the momentum to leap back onto a stable branch of the world tree, panting as he watches the dragon's reaction. He curses under his breath, noting that the slash wasn't deep enough to fully immobilize the beast. Enraged and wounded, the dragon lunges at him with terrifying speed. Its impact against the tree causes a localized explosion of splinters and debris, the sheer force of the collision shattering the branch and sending the mysterious knight flying backward. He recovers mid-air, but the strain is taking its toll. Sweat pours down his arm as his muscles scream from the exertion. The dragon gives him no quarter, emitting a deafening roar before charging again. The knight digs his heels in, settling into a low, defensive stance, and dryly tells the monster to take it easy on him. In a move of pure desperation, the knight activates the hidden specialty of his eye. A flash of light, more brilliant than a collapsing star, erupts from his gaze, saturating the environment in a blinding white veil. The dragon, reliant on its keen sight, is forced to recoil and clamp its eyes shut. This is the opening they needed. From the shadows behind the knight, Vlad emerges like a bolt of lightning. He has channeled every spark of his inner strength into his sword, the metal humming with high-voltage energy and emitting jagged arcs of electricity. With a primal scream, Vlad brings the glowing blade down toward the dragon's skull. The strike is perfect, but the dragon's instincts are supernatural. At the last microsecond, it tilts its head, parrying the lethal blow with its hardened horn. The sound of metal meeting enchanted bone rings out like a funeral bell. Seeing Vlad's frustration, the dragon actually begins to laugh, a guttural, mocking sound that vibrates through Vlad's chest. Infuriated by the creature's arrogance, Vlad reaches for the dagger sheathed at the small of his back. He snarls at the beast, asking what it finds so funny, and before the dragon can react, he plunges the dagger deep into its vulnerable eye. The dragon's laughter turns into a high-pitched shriek of pure torment. Vlad doesn't stop there. He triggers a massive discharge of energy through the dagger, sending a shockwave directly into the dragon's brain. The dragon begins to thrash in a frenzy, slamming its head repeatedly against the trunk of the world tree in an attempt to crush the human clinging to its face. Vlad holds on with white-knuckled desperation, his fingers locked around the hilt of the dagger. The mysterious knight moves to intervene, hoping to draw the dragon's attention, but he is caught by a blind, reflexive sweep of the dragon's tail. The impact is like being hit by a falling mountain. The knight is launched into the empty air, plummeting toward the forest floor. As he falls, he manages to shout a final warning to Vlad, telling him to be careful. The knight falls for dozens of meters, his body bouncing off thick branches and protruding roots, each collision slowing his momentum but adding to his mounting injuries. When he finally hits the earth, he lies still for a long moment before struggling to his hands and knees. His entire frame trembles from the shock of the fall. He coughs, spitting out dirt and blood, and mutters to himself that he should probably just retire early. High above, Vlad is now completely alone. He watches the knight disappear into the canopy below and curses his luck. He realizes that while it is fortunate his companion survived the fall, the burden of the hunt now rests solely on his shoulders. He is one man against a mountain of scales and fire. The dragon continues to swing its head with violent, erratic motions, trying to dislodge the fly stinging its eye, but Vlad refuses to let go. Recognizing that simple thrashing won't work, the dragon changes its tactics. It builds up speed and charges head first toward a solid section of the world tree's bark, intending to use Vlad as a buffer. Just before the impact, the snake's spirit manifests, wrapping its ethereal form around Vlad to provide a layer of protection. The collision is catastrophic. While the spirit absorbs the worst of the physical trauma, the sheer kinetic force is enough to rupture Vlad's internal vessels. He coughs up a spray of crimson, his vision swimming. The dragon, seeing through its one remaining eye, now glowing a vengeful, bloody red, realizes its strategy is working. It begins a rhythmic, brutal assault, battering Vlad against the tree over and over. The structural integrity of the tree's bark finally gives way, shattering into 1,000 pieces. In the chaos of the wood's splinters and the dragon's roar, Vlad's grip finally slips. He is cast out into the void, falling into the vast, empty space surrounding the world tree. The dragon watches him go, a sense of dark satisfaction radiating from its wounded form as Vlad's unconscious body disappears into the mist. As Vlad falls, the sensation of wind gives way to a strange, rhythmic pulsing. A soft, bioluminescent light begins to emanate from below, growing brighter with every second. He feels a sudden change in pressure, as if he has plunged into the cool, silent depths of a vast lake. Water seems to rise into the air around him, defying gravity as he drifts through a weightless, aquatic world. Then, the spirits of the world tree, tiny, flickering motes of pure essence, descend upon him. They circle his body, their light intensifying until the blue void is replaced by a warm, golden radiance. Vlad's eyes flutter open. He finds himself no longer in the air or the water, but lying on a bed of soft, amber-colored grass. The spirits continue to dance around him in this strange, ethereal realm. He slowly sits up, his injuries seemingly numbed by the atmosphere of this place. He looks around in wonder, whispering to himself that this place is, but he can't find the words. Suddenly, a voice cuts through the silence, a voice he knows better than his own. It asks him if it hurts a lot. Vlad freezes, his heart hammering against his ribs. He turns toward the sound and sees a figure standing in the distance, bathed in the glow of a sun that never sets. It is his master. The man stands with his back to Vlad, his silhouette sharp and regal against the horizon, his sword held firmly at his side. Vlad can only stare, shocked to his very core, as he realizes he is standing in the presence of the one person he thought he had lost forever. In a realm where the boundaries of reality seem to blur into an endless horizon, Vlad finds himself locked in a desperate, phantom chase. He pushes his body to its absolute limit, his muscles screaming and his lungs burning with every ragged breath as he sprints toward the solitary figure of his master. Yet, as he pours every ounce of his soul into this pursuit, he is struck by a terrifying realization. The faster he runs, the more the distance between them remains a cruel, unchanging constant. He isn't gaining an inch. The space between them feels like an infinite void, a physical manifestation of his own perceived inadequacy. The shock is visible on Vlad's face, his eyes wide with a mixture of confusion and growing despair. He watches as the master remains just out of reach, a silhouette of unreachable mastery. In the silence of his own mind, a frantic realization takes hold. He simply cannot get close. No matter the effort, no matter the desire, the gap will not close. He continues to run, fueled by a stubborn refusal to accept his limits. But the truth eventually becomes too heavy to ignore. The realization that he is chasing a ghost of a goal causes his legs to falter. He finally comes to a dead stop, his chest heaving, his spirit momentarily crushed under the weight of his failure. He stands there, trembling, and wonders if he is still truly unable to reach that level. His master stands before him, a pillar of calm amidst Vlad's internal storm. He says nothing at first, letting the silence emphasize the gravity of the moment. Vlad clenches his fists so hard that his knuckles turn white and his skin threatens to tear. He laments out loud, questioning the universe itself. He has put in so much effort, he has bled and suffered, and yet he wonders if he is truly incapable of getting even a single step closer to the greatness he seeks. The distance between them feels like a physical scar on the landscape, a reminder of everything Vlad has yet to achieve. Behind the master's silent gaze, a deeper internal monologue unfolds. He feels a profound sense of sorrow for his pupil, recognizing the unique sadness that comes from trying one's absolute best and still falling short. He ponders what words could possibly serve as a balm for such a wounded heart. Seeing Vlad standing there, demoralized and staring at the dust beneath his boots, the master finally breaks the silence. His voice is steady, resonant, and filled with a fatherly warmth that catches Vlad off guard. He tells Vlad that despite his perceived failure, he is immensely proud of him. He explains that the world is a harsh, unforgiving place where the things we cannot accomplish far outnumber the things we can. However, the true measure of a man isn't in his success, but in his refusal to stop reaching for the stars, even when they seem light years away. The master continues his speech, his words weaving a tapestry of inspiration for the broken warrior. He tells Vlad that he takes pride in the way he kept his eyes fixed on the heights, even during those lonely times when no one was watching and no one offered a single word of recognition. This, he says, is a truth Vlad must never forget. The place where a person chooses to look, the goal they fixate upon, is what ultimately defines and becomes their world. With a tone of command tempered by love, he tells Vlad to lift his head and face his destiny. The master's words have a transformative effect, cutting through Vlad's self-doubt like a blade through silk. Vlad looks up, his voice trembling as he asks if he has been doing things right all along. The master's response is immediate and absolute. He tells him that he has, without question. Vlad, still grappling with the immensity of the path ahead, wonders if he can truly improve from this point forward. He confesses that no matter how hard he pushes himself, there always seems to be a larger, more formidable world standing in his way, blocking his path like an immovable mountain. A soft, knowing smile seems to touch the master's lips as he asks Vlad if he remembers the day he first begged to learn the art of the sword. In those early days, Vlad used to swing his training blade toward the blue moon, a target that seemed utterly unreachable to a mere novice. But now, the master points out a truth that Vlad hadn't fully realized. Hasn't his sword already touched that very moonlight? Vlad is struck by the revelation, his mind racing back to his growth. The master speaks of remembering every single one of Vlad's steps, recounting them one by one. He praises Vlad for not allowing the sheer immensity of the world to break his spirit. Instead, Vlad took steps that were more brilliant and noble than anything that had come before. With a sudden, deliberate movement, the master reaches down and draws a sword that had been driven deep into the earth nearby. He tells Vlad that they have done remarkably well together and urges him to maintain his resolve. He affirms that Vlad is acting with honor and that he is in the right. With a flick of his wrist, the master tosses the sword through the air. It spins with a lethal, shimmering grace before slamming into the ground right at Vlad's feet. Vlad stares at the weapon in stunned silence. He recognizes it instantly. It is the legendary blade that sat at the very heart of the world tree, the swordmaster's own sword. As the master begins to turn away, his face still shrouded in mystery, he offers one final piece of wisdom. He tells Vlad that everything in this existence begins with faith in oneself. He pleads with Vlad never to lose that faith, revealing that his own belief in Vlad never faltered, not even for a fleeting second. Now, he declares, it is finally Vlad's turn to carry the torch. As the words fade, the veil of shadow finally lifts, and for the first time, Vlad sees his master's face clearly, a moment of profound connection that transcends the physical realm. A wave of conflicting emotions washes over Vlad. He is heartbroken to see his master go, yet filled with a burgeoning sense of joy and purpose. As if responding to his internal state, a cloud of glowing butterflies begins to swirl around him in a rhythmic, hypnotic dance. The master begins to fade away, his form dissolving into a flurry of fallen leaves that gently cover the space where he once stood. Slowly, the vision of the phantom realm recedes, and Vlad is transported back to the physical world. He finds himself lying on the soft, vibrant grass at the base of the world tree. The butterflies are still there, circling him like silent guardians as he opens his eyes to the waking world. He sits up, taking in his surroundings, and realizes he is deep within the sanctuary of the world tree. Then, Something catches his eye that makes his breath catch in his throat. The swordmaster's sword is there, glowing with an intensity it has never shown before. Vlad looks at the blade and whispers to himself that it is finally his turn. Meanwhile, on the other side of the sacred tree, a dark shadow looms. The dragon has continued its relentless ascent, crawling up the massive trunk until it reaches the dwelling place of the tree spirits. It stares at these ancient beings with a singular, glowing red eye, its gaze filled with malice. It scoffs at their modest, fragile forms, declaring that their appearance doesn't matter. The beast charges toward them, its voice dripping with greed as it announces its intention to devour the potential of these children of the tree to achieve its own twisted perfection. The dragon is consumed by a manic excitement, its jaws unhinging to consume the spirits in one horrific gulp. Suddenly, a voice like a thunderclap cuts through the air, commanding the beast to shut its mouth. The dragon is jolted by the unexpected interruption, freezing in its tracks. A swarm of luminous butterflies suddenly coalesces in front of the beast, having transported Vlad from the ground below in an instant. Vlad stands there, looking down at the dragon with a gaze of absolute contempt. He sneers at the monster, calling it nothing more than a piece of shit lizard. The butterflies gently lower Vlad until he is standing directly in front of the dragon, acting as a living shield for the world tree spirits who huddle behind him. He immediately drops into a low, lethal combat stance, his body coiled like a spring. The dragon glares at him, but within seconds, its predatory instincts flare up in alarm. It notices the sword in Vlad's hand and immediately senses a level of danger it hasn't felt in centuries. The dragon unleashes a roar so powerful it shakes the very leaves of the tree, but Vlad remains an immovable pillar of defiance. He closes one eye, drawing his power inward, focusing it into a singular point. He tells himself to go deeper, to push just a little further, repeating the mantra that it is now his turn to protect those who cannot protect themselves. A blinding, devastating white aura suddenly erupts from Vlad's body, illuminating the entire canopy. The dragon, sensing that this is a fight for survival, flings itself at Vlad with a roar of murderous intent. Vlad doesn't hesitate. He lunges forward to meet the beast head-on. As the two forces collide, the dragon's red eye burns with a desperate need to kill the interloper and feast on the spirits. But Vlad is no longer the boy who was chasing shadows. He has ascended, his power surging until he is in a state of Super Saiyan Level 2, with arcs of bioelectricity and pure energy dancing around his form. He is a whirlwind of destruction, determined to put an end to the dragon's reign. The dragon attempts to impale Vlad with its massive, jagged horn, but Vlad is too fast. He strikes the dragon's neck with his sword, the impact so heavy it sends the beast's head snapping backward. The dragon reels from the blow, but the cut is deep. Vlad doesn't give it a moment to recover. He immediately charges a second, even more powerful strike. With a clean, surgical motion, he shears the dragon's horn right off its head and follows through with a slash that cuts across the beast's eye. The dragon let out a harrowing scream of pure agony, its massive frame beginning to tremble with an emotion it has never known: fear. In a frantic attempt to regain control, the dragon launches its final defense, firing a volley of razor-sharp dragon spines at Vlad. They streak through the air like black arrows, but Vlad is ready. He activates his Byakugan, and the world instantly shifts into slow motion. He can see every vibration in the air, every trajectory of the incoming projectiles. In his mind, he realizes that he can finally see the truth that was hidden beneath the layers of deception. He spots the lines of death, the narrow, singular paths to victory, and weaves through the storm of spines with impossible grace. The dragon is paralyzed with shock as Vlad closes the distance in a heartbeat. The beast tries to raise a claw to strike, but Vlad unleashes his conqueror's haki. The air becomes heavy, saturated with a crushing spiritual pressure that physically pins the dragon to the spot. The monster finds itself unable to move, its body shaking uncontrollably under the weight of Vlad's sheer willpower. With the beast immobilized, Vlad drives his sword deep into the dragon's flank. Blood erupts from the wound like a river in full flood, drenching the bark of the world tree. The dragon can feel Vlad's overwhelming power flooding its veins, and it is completely powerless to stop it. The sword embedded in its side begins to glow with a blinding light as Vlad channels every bit of his energy into the blade. He shouts one last time that it is his turn. The resulting explosion of energy is cataclysmic. From the very summit of the world tree, a massive cannon of pure energy erupts, tearing through the clouds and stretching toward the heavens. The light is so brilliant that it can be seen for miles. Far below, the elven inhabitants of the forest look up, their faces filled with wonder and disbelief at the sheer scale of the power on display. The mysterious knight and the great elder stop in their tracks, staring upward in stunned silence. Even the priestess, deep in her prayers within the heart of the tree, feels the resonance of the blast. Across the forest, Varates and his band of elven warriors have finally succeeded in bringing down another dragon, though at a terrible cost in lives. Varates looks toward the world tree, his face pale as he feels the overwhelming, crushing presence radiating from the peak. He gasps, wondering what could possibly possess such power. One of the elven soldiers, pointing toward the summit, cries out in shock that the dragon is falling. Varates turns his gaze upward and sees a figure standing silhouetted against the fading light, a shimmering blade held high. In his awe, Varates whispers that it must be the legendary sword master himself come back to save them. But as the light fades, the truth remains. It isn't a ghost of the past, but Vlad, the new master of the blade. The dust of the battlefield has barely settled as the mysterious knight stands before the elven elders, his presence a heavy shadow in their ancient halls. The air is thick with the scent of ozone and old blood. One of the elders speaks, his voice echoing with a weary authority, explaining that the Grand Elder is currently undergoing treatment and cannot attend. He asks for the knight's understanding before turning a sharp, inquisitive gaze toward him, demanding to know what a lone human knight could possibly want from the elven people. Inside his mind, the mysterious knight observes the council with calculated precision. He realizes these people are still shackled to the trauma of the past, unable to escape the lingering nightmare of Nidhogg. This is his opening. He senses that the fierce, ancestral hatred they once held for the Empire has finally begun to fray, and he intends to tear it wide open. He looks at them and speaks his truth, demanding that Absalon immediately halt the distribution of the tea known as tuzin within their borders. The demand hits the room like a physical blow. One elder scoffs, questioning why they should cease the sale of a product that is already flowing smoothly through the markets. They acknowledge his role in saving the world tree, but they warn him that meddling in the internal affairs of the elves is a step too far. The knight's expression hardens. He realizes he has been far too subtle with these creatures of the wood. With a look of chilling seriousness, he drops the facade, telling them plainly to stop spreading their poison throughout the empire. Confusion ripples through the elders. They claim not to understand his accusations, asking what a simple tea like tuzin has to do with poison. The knight leans in, his voice dropping to a dangerous register as he asks if they truly remain ignorant of what those tea leaves actually represent. He delivers a grim prophecy. If Absalon continues to be sold, even this sanctuary, this newly settled forest, will find no safety from the coming storm. The elders are shaken, their pride wounded. One of them demands to know exactly what he is implying. The knight explains that the empire is currently standing on a knife's edge, wavering and unstable. He sees right through them. He knows several members of the council intend to use this moment of imperial weakness to settle blood feuds that have rotted for generations. The elder calls his words a bridge too far, declaring that while he saved the world tree, his tongue has earned him a death sentence. Though, out of mercy, they will allow him to leave the forest alive. The knight remains unmoved, his resolve like iron. He tells them not to be deceived by appearances. The empire itself hasn't weakened, only the grip of the imperial family. He reminds them of the emperor's grave illness, a secret that has surely reached even their secluded ears. Because of this power vacuum, the imperial family's sword, the very blade meant to protect the throne, has turned into a leash, controlling the sovereign and shaking the very foundations of the realm. His tone turns dark, cinematic in its gravity, as he warns them that an old dragon is lurking in the periphery, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. He explains that the nobility has grown fat and powerful during the long years of peace, their ambitions now outstripping the crown's ability to restrain them. These lords are already raising their banners, searching for any scrap of justification to plunge the world into war. And in his eyes, Absalom is the perfect spark for that powder keg. The elders are stunned into silence. Finally, one of them whispers a single question. Who is he? The knight finally reveals the weight of his lineage, announcing himself as Augustine, the former imperial enforcer commander. The name sends a shockwave through the council. The enforcers were the legendary blades of the emperor, the only force capable of standing toe-to-toe with the imperial guards. Augustine delivers one final warning. The distribution of Absalom is a double-edged sword, a lethal poison that will eventually turn back to slaughter the elves who created it. The scene shifts as golden morning light floods a quiet room. Vlad lies motionless in bed, his body a map of bandages after the soul-crushing battle against the dragon. He is trying to find peace in sleep, but a persistent, irritating noise forces him awake. He sits up, his expression one of pure annoyance, only to find Gerda hovering over him. Gerda is wide-eyed with shock, asking how on earth his captain is already upright after such a beating. Vlad grumbles that it's simply too noisy to sleep. Gerda is baffled, insisting that the room is deathly quiet. He begins to panic, wondering if Vlad has suffered some kind of brain damage or hearing loss. He starts clapping his hands violently next to Vlad's ear, shouting to see if he can hear anything. Vlad snaps at him to knock it off. The truth is far more complex. Vlad is being haunted. Shimmering, ethereal spirits of the world tree swarm around him, a side effect of him forcing his way into the deep world. Even with his eyes wide open, the spirit realm refuses to fade away. Exasperated, Vlad tells the spirits to leave him alone and give him a moment of peace. His eyes then drift to the corner of the room, locking onto the swordmaster's blade. Gerda notices his gaze and asks about the weapon, wondering what's so special about it. When Vlad casually mentions it belongs to the swordmaster, Gerda goes quiet, the gears in his head slowly turning. Then, the realization hits him like a lightning bolt. He stammers, asking if he means the swordmaster, the founding king, the first emperor of the empire. Vlad sighs, asking how many times he has to confirm the obvious. He tells Gerda to stop shouting because his head feels like it's about to explode. As Gerda breaks into a cold sweat at the thought of holding such a holy relic, Vlad reflects on the mystery of the man who helped him. The man who saw the forgotten world of spirits and wielded the blade of the first emperor as if it were a common tool. Looking at the sword, Vlad remembers the voice that gave it to him, a voice that spoke with the authority of a master reclaiming his own steel. The camera pans over the massive, cold remains of the fallen dragon. Elven scouts are swarming the corpse, but they move aside as Augustine approaches. He asks to examine the beast, and they grant him passage. Augustine kneels by the massive gash in the dragon's chest, tracing the line of the killing blow. He notes that Vlad struck with clinical precision, piercing the heart in a single, fluid motion. But as he looks closer, his eyes narrow. He realizes that Vlad didn't just stop at the kill. The boy must have felt the dragon's life extinguish at his fingertips, yet the traces of the following strikes show a terrifying lack of restraint. Augustine muses that while their sword styles share the same ancient root, the way they manifest is worlds apart. He sighs, noting that the beginning of Vlad's technique was noble, but the finish was nothing short of cruel. To Augustine, this young knight from the north is a living paradox, a contradiction of heritage and violence that spells nothing but trouble for the future. Back at the window, Vlad watches the sun climb higher, feeling the first true breath of spring on his face. He's still pestered by the spirits and wonders aloud when they'll finally go back to where they came from. He's just grateful that, for now, their voices have fallen silent. He reflects on his journey into the deep world, realizing that composure is the key to that power. Forcing it leads to a backlash that even the legendary Rutiger couldn't withstand. The door swings open and the elven priestess marches in, visibly annoyed. She scolds him for removing his bandages, but Vlad counters that he's already mostly healed and the wraps were cutting off his circulation. The priestess is stunned. Those wounds involved cracked bones and deep lacerations that should have taken a human months to recover from. Vlad is impressed by the potency of elven medicine, noting it did the job in under a week. He asks if he can take some medicine for the road, then adds a strange, specific request. He needs cough medicine, something effective but without any side effects. They lock eyes, a heavy silence falling between them. In that moment of connection, the priestess's eyes begin to glow with a supernatural light. Deep within her pupil, the silhouette of a mysterious man flickers into existence, a haunting image of what's to come. The scene fades as we leave the forest behind, shifting to the flickering embers of a fireplace where Joseph sits alone, lost in thought. The chapter begins with the priestess meticulously tending to Vlad's lingering wounds. As she works, Vlad breaks the silence, asking her to provide some specialized tea for Joseph and a supply of the elves' renowned medicines. The priestess pauses, looking at him with a clinical gaze before explaining that while she can grant his request if he insists, it ultimately won't make much of a difference. She points out that the incredible speed of his own recovery is due entirely to his exceptionally high vitality, a trait most others simply do not possess. She adds a somber note, warning him that no matter how potent the remedy he takes back, it will not be nearly as useful for that person as it was for him. Vlad is struck by her blunt assessment, his expression clouding with surprise and concern. After a few seconds of heavy silence, Vlad begins to respond, but his voice trails off before he can finish his thought. The priestess watches him closely, sensing his underlying worry, and softens her tone. She offers to give him a portion of the tea the elves themselves consume, noting that it will at least provide a small measure of comfort to the patient. A grateful Vlad offers his thanks, and she immediately tells him to sit back down, insisting she must finish the treatment. When Vlad tentatively asks if he can finally ditch the heavy bandages, she cuts him off with a sharp and final refusal. At that very moment, Varates is making his way toward Vlad's quarters. He is startled to find 2 guards stationed outside the door and asks if the priestess is currently inside with the patient. They simply nod in confirmation. Varates pushes the door open, starting to offer a sincere apology for his lack of visits due to his busy schedule, but the words die in his throat. He freezes at the sight of the priestess leaning in close, carefully spreading medicinal cream across Vlad's bare chest. From his perspective, the proximity and the quiet atmosphere make it look like a deeply romantic and intimate moment. Varates stands there, paralyzed and clenching his fist in a fit of silent jealousy. Vlad finally notices him and casually asks if he has only just arrived. Varates meets his gaze with a look of pure, smoldering fury. Feeling the sudden shift in the room's temperature, Vlad desperately tries to explain that she is only applying medicine, his voice trembling slightly under the pressure. The priestess, however, remains completely unfazed by the drama, continuing her work with total indifference. Despite Vlad's repeated and panicked swearing that nothing is going on, Varates continues to glare at him with daggers in his eyes. A few minutes later, the atmosphere cools as the 2 men walk through the winding streets of the elven village. Vlad carries the swordmaster's sword with him while Varates explains the reason for his sudden visit. He informs Vlad that the Great Elder has requested a personal audience with him. Varates admits that he delayed the visit slightly, as he was waiting for the Great Elder to fully recover his strength after the recent crisis. He expresses his hope that Vlad isn't offended by the wait, assuring him that the Elder has definitely not forgotten the debt they owe him. Vlad remains humble, replying that he never once thought otherwise. As they walk, Varades shifts the conversation to Vlad's equipment, remarking on how unfortunate it is that his sword and armor were completely annihilated in the heat of battle. Vlad sighs, noting that those items held a great deal of personal and practical value to him. Varades offers a mysterious smile, suggesting that what comes next might just make up for the loss, leaving Vlad more than a little confused. They soon arrive before a massive, ornate gate. Varades announces his presence, stating that he has brought the guest of the world tree. The heavy doors creak open to reveal the Great Elder and a circle of elven high officials. Standing prominently beside them are two large objects draped in vibrant red veils. The Great Elder warmly welcomes Vlad of Sora, expressing his hope that the young knight has found his stay in the forest comfortable. Vlad bows politely, responding that he has been treated so well it felt as if he were resting in his own home. The Great Elder is pleased by the answer. He acknowledges the sacrifice of Vlad's gear and explains that the elven people intend to grant him compensation of equal, or perhaps greater, worth. On his command, the other elves step forward and pull back the red cloths, leaving Vlad speechless. The elder explains that they have prepared a dual set of armor, a heavy suit for the heat of the battlefield and a lighter, flexible set to be worn underneath at all times. Vlad leans in, noticing a specific detail engraved upon the plate, the words Vlad, defender of children. The Great Elder explains that since a single fragment of his old armor remained intact among the ruins, they painstakingly fixed it onto the new set. He reminds Vlad of his heroic stand, the knight who protected the lives of the little ones, recalling how he fought to shield the spirits of the world tree during the dragon's assault. The elder tells him it is a phrase that suits him perfectly. Vlad bows his head in deep respect, moved by their careful consideration. The Great Elder then turns his attention to the legendary blade strapped to Vlad's back. He tells Vlad that if he truly wishes to, he may take the sword with him. Vlad is stunned by the offer. The elder explains that while the swordmaster's sword was meant to protect the world tree, the fact that Vlad was the one to draw it and successfully defend the forest proves he is qualified to wield it. He admits it is painful for the elves to see such a relic leave, but acknowledges that it was always a weapon they themselves were never meant to handle. To the absolute shock of everyone in the room, Vlad declines, stating clearly that he will leave the sword with them. The Great Elder is bewildered, unable to fathom why a warrior would turn down a legendary blade that would grant him immense power. When pressed for an answer, Vlad grips the hilt one last time and explains that the sword spoke to him. It told him it does not want to leave this place. He lets go, and the sword remains standing perfectly upright on its own, a supernatural display of its own will. Varades, the elder, and the surrounding elves watch in stunned silence. Vlad then makes a different request. If they wish to grant him a weapon, he asks them to forge a new one from scratch. He clarifies that he doesn't need the best sword in the world. He only needs one that can fully withstand and reflect his own will, a blade that belongs exclusively to him. Sometime later, the scene shifts to the outskirts of the village where Augustine is preparing for his own departure. As he packs his gear, he notes that Vlad will likely be staying a bit longer. Vlad confirms this, mentioning that the elves told him it would take about a week to complete his new weapon through a specialized ritual. Augustine is taken aback, questioning the nature of a ritual-forged blade. Vlad admits he is just as clueless as he is. Regardless, Augustine advises him to take everything the elves offer without hesitation. Changing the subject, Augustine admits his curiosity regarding the identity of Vlad's mysterious master. He suggests that the Dragon Slayer's list might hold the answer. Vlad is surprised to learn such a record exists, and Augustine explains that it is kept within the imperial capital. The Dragulia family records every detail related to dragons with obsessive care. If his master was truly a dragon slayer, his name will be there. He adds that while officially only the founding king has ever wielded the imperial sword to slay a dragon, there may be unofficial figures, ghosts of history, much like Vlad himself. Looking at the young knight, Augustine reflects privately on the danger of Vlad's situation. Even though his own name doesn't carry legendary weight, He believes that by giving Vlad the mark of a former military police commander, he might help him avoid the worst of the political storms to come. He suddenly tosses a coin to Vlad, who catches it effortlessly. It is a single ducat. Augustine finally introduces himself properly, revealing his full name is Augustine. He tells Vlad that if anyone recognizes his combat style in the future, he should use that name as a shield. Vlad stands in silence for a moment before bowing deeply, thanking Master Augustine for the invaluable lessons. As Augustine walks away, he thinks to himself that although he spent his entire life being a loyal tool of the empire, it seems he has finally managed to leave a small, personal mark on the world through this young man. Vlad and the priestess are buried deep within the grand library, their figures dwarfed by towering shelves as they pore over ancient, dusty tomes. Around them, the spirits of the world tree flicker like living embers, casting a soft glow on the parchment. The priestess looks up, asking Vlad if the old man has finally departed. When Vlad confirms his exit, a weight seems to lift from her shoulders as she breathes a heavy sigh of relief. Confused by her sudden change in mood, Vlad asks why she is so glad he is gone. But after a lingering silence that stretches between them, she simply gives a stubborn look and tells him she isn't going to say. Vlad can only shake his head, thinking to himself that she is, as always, entirely unpredictable. The priestess then shifts her focus, her eyes gleaming with curiosity as she asks about that legendary place called Deermar. She wants to know if the rumors are true. Is there really a colossal white snake residing there? Vlad confirms the myth, describing the creature as something truly massive, a beast large enough to swallow every spirit in the room in one terrifying gulp. The spirits shiver and recoil in fear, hovering closer to the priestess as she calls them back to her side. She muses aloud that she'd love to see it one day, even suggesting that, if one considers their origins, the snake might actually be something like their aunt. Vlad, baffled by her logic, asks if spirits even have family trees, to which the priestess admits it's a fair question, but she's decided to call her aunt regardless. Once again, Vlad realizes it's impossible to guess what she will say next. Turning to more serious matters, Vlad brings up the subject of the sword, questioning if there is truly a need to prepare such an elaborate ritual for his sake. He points out that they already have a functional forge and suggests that he only requires a sturdy, resistant longsword to get the job done. The priestess, however, won't hear of it. She insists that she will be the one to craft it, her eyes never leaving her books as she asks him if he can't see how hard she is studying for this very purpose. When Vlad asks why she is going through all this unnecessary trouble, she explains that this ritual is something she must perform at least once. If she doesn't, the ancient tradition will die out, and if it stops with her, it will be lost to time forever. She declares with a firm resolve that she won't let the next priestess be forced to learn alone from cold books, just as she had to do. She tells him to be patient, promising that together they will forge a truly magnificent blade. Watching her dedication, Vlad comes to a quiet realization. He isn't the only one who needs to find his own path in this world. This girl also carries a heavy duty that she must fulfill on her own terms. A small, genuine smile plays on his lips as he tells her she can take all the time she needs, and that he will be waiting. Her face lights up at his words, and she beams a bright smile back at him. They remain in the quiet sanctuary of the library, the priestess lost in her studies while Vlad meticulously cleans his dagger. In that moment, they exist in perfect, silent harmony. As evening falls over the elven city, the atmosphere shifts. The entire population begins to gather in the central square, creating a sea of expectant faces. Gerda is visibly shaken by the scale of the assembly and asks the captain if this isn't a bit too much pressure for one man. Vlad doesn't hide his own nerves, asking Gerda if he honestly thinks he's feeling calm right now. The rhythmic thumping of drums begins to echo as elven soldiers stand in disciplined rows, their spears held high as they await Vlad's arrival. In the heart of the square stands the priestess, draped in a breathtakingly beautiful dress, lost in prayer as she waits for him to take his place. As Vlad and Gerda approach, the Great Elder stands ready to receive them. He gazes at the sky, remarking that while the sun is often rigorous and demanding, the moon is benevolent, and she will surely look the other way for just a brief moment. He turns to Vlad and instructs him to begin the mental work. He must visualize the exact shape of the sword he desires. Vlad asks if simple imagination is enough, and the Great Elder emphasizes that the more vivid and intense the internal image is, the better the result will be. Vlad nods, signaling his understanding. The Great Elder then commands him to take a step forward, sit within the sacred circle of the altar, and close his eyes. As Vlad settles into his position, the priestess rises, her eyes fixed on him as he enters a meditative trance. She begins her descent toward Vlad, moving with a grace that matches the rising beat of the drums. As she stops directly in front of him, she tells Vlad to start the visualization. Immediately, the elven mages begin to weave their spells, their magic illuminating the square. The priestess speaks with a haunting clarity, telling him that what he desires and what he intends to carry with him are questions whose answers can only be found deep within his own soul. Vlad remains still, his eyes shut tight as the spirits of the world tree begin to dance around him in a swirling vortex of light. Deep in his mind, he asks himself the ultimate question: what is it that he truly wants? Within the void of his closed eyes, tiny sparks of fire begin to dance. Vlad continues to contemplate the weight of his journey and what he must take with him into the future. Suddenly, that small crackle of sparks erupts into a roaring furnace. As he focuses on the image of his blade, he thinks of that which once shone brighter than the countless stars in the midnight sky. In this mental landscape, he reaches out his open hand toward the glowing steel. Then, he closes his hand into a tight fist, and the vision shifts violently. A heavy hammer strikes a blade wreathed in white-hot flames. Vlad declares it to be his star. In response to his resolve, a cloud of glowing butterflies begins to swarm around him. To his astonishment, a door stands slightly ajar in the darkness before him, spilling out a blinding, celestial light. Realizing that this threshold marks the true beginning of his journey, Vlad steps through. On the other side, he finds an elderly man rhythmically striking a hammer against steel, forging Vlad's new weapon. Vlad softly tells him that he's back. The blacksmith turns around, noting that Vlad has arrived at the perfect time. This is the very same blacksmith who died while repairing Vlad's sword for the last time. A man who had known him since he was a young boy and had mended his steel through every hardship. Vlad is overcome with joy at the sight of his old friend. He explains that he wants to forge a new sword, and the blacksmith smiles, telling him he's in luck because he just acquired an incredible material, a meteorite. Since the metal fell directly from the stars, it is pure, free of earthly impurities, and incredibly resistant. Vlad requests that the sword be a simple longsword without any gaudy decorations. He explains that since his first blade was plain, he has grown accustomed to that honest weight. The blacksmith lets out a hearty laugh, telling Vlad not to worry, as that's the only kind of sword he knows how to make anyway. He takes the celestial ore and asks if they should begin the work. He places the metal into an iron crucible over a roaring fire, fueled by the spirits who dance and whirl around the flames. As the forge glows with an intense heat, Vlad begins to recount his many adventures and exploits to his old friend. The workshop feels incredibly warm and welcoming, a sanctuary outside of time. Finally, the blacksmith finishes the shaping and plunges the glowing steel into the water, the hiss of steam filling the room as the blade cools. He holds up the finished weapon and tells Vlad it's ready. Vlad is caught off guard, asking if it's truly done so soon. The blacksmith simply nods. Vlad is hit by a wave of conflicting emotions. He feels the joy of the gift, but the sting of the coming separation. Biting his lip, he thinks to himself that he knows his time in this vision isn't infinite, but he desperately wishes he could stay just a moment longer. The blacksmith gently hands him the sword, telling him he is glad that, for once, they can say a proper goodbye. He tells Vlad it was truly wonderful to see him again. Clutching the hilt of his new star-born blade, Vlad looks at him and replies that for him, the feeling is exactly the same. The chapter begins deep within the Grand Hall of Vastapal, the capital of the Duchy of Baranov. Inside the chambers, the Duke questions his visitor, asking if he came all this way just to spout such nonsense. With a menacing tone and eyes glowing a sinister red, the Duke glares at his guests, demanding to know if they are truly asking him to hand over the dragon's fragment. Devious, the head butler of the Dragon Killer Knights, bows slightly and counters, stating that as the Duke is well aware, the potential of a dragon becomes more perfect as it gathers. Looking the Duke straight in the eyes, Devious asks if even Lindblom wasn't drawn to that very potential. Hearing this, the Duke realizes to himself that, as he suspected, matters regarding dragons cannot be hidden from them. Devious presses on, stating that Ravnoma has already proven what kind of results uncontrollable power brings, asking what has become of those who were the alliance leaders of the West for so long. The Duke's expression darkens completely as he asks in a deadly serious tone if Devious is threatening him right now. Devious bows deeply at his words, replying how could that possibly be the case, and begs the Duke not to misinterpret their proposal. He explains that House Dragulia simply wishes to share the burden that has suddenly fallen upon the Duke. Devious continues, stating that if the Duke focuses only on the north, he believes the matter of Baron Uthman's family can be sufficiently resolved. He promises that if the Duke hands over the dragon's fragment, the burden he carries will be lightened, and the Dragon Killer Knights stationed in the north can finally return home. Gritting his teeth in a silent fury, the Duke realizes he is being forced to choose between the dragon's fragment and Baron Uthman's family, knowing that whichever path he chooses, it will be a painful loss. Seeing his hesitation, Devious smoothly tells him that if it is too difficult to decide right now, he will give him some time to think. However, the Duke suddenly stands up from his throne, declaring that there is absolutely no need for that. Standing tall with his eyes flashing crimson, he states that iron does not change, and the same goes for the oath made to the Swordmaster. Descending the stairs to approach his guest, the Duke tells Devious to go and tell the Dragonblood Duke. He stops right in front of Devious, fixing him with a terrifying expression to stop talking nonsense. Devious shows absolutely no fear, simply asking if the Duke will truly be able to handle the consequences. Releasing a torrent of his overwhelming power, the Duke defiantly fires back, asking him handle them. The scene shifts away to the Elven village, opening inside Vlad's room where Gerda stands in absolute wonder, staring at Vlad's brand new armor and questioning how much all of this must be worth. The priestess and her two guards glare at him menacingly, and the priestess sharply tells him, "Don't you dare try to put a price on it." Annoyed, she explains that the armor is deeply imbued with the blessing of the World Tree, and the scabbard itself was crafted from a fragment of the World Tree, emphasizing that these are not things you can simply buy with money. Gerda realizes he asked the wrong question and quickly apologizes to them. Vlad chimes in to ease the tension, noting that the joints are flexible, making it incredibly easy to move in, and adds that it is unbelievably light. The priestess tells Vlad she is glad he likes it, to which Vlad enthusiastically agrees, saying it is wonderful and that he has never seen such incredible equipment in his entire life. The priestess then falls silent for a few moments, her gaze shifting toward Vlad's sword as she softly remarks that while the blade has taken shape, it is still not a finished product. We see that the hilt of the sword is made of simple wood. The priestess apologizes, explaining it was their first time attempting this, so they could not make it properly. Looking down at the weapon, Vlad reassures her, saying not at all, "Holy maiden," as he really likes this sword. Besides, he adds, he was able to meet someone precious again because of it. Remembering the touching moment when the sword was first handed to him, Vlad states that if it were a sword that couldn't be used in the first place, the old man wouldn't have given it to him. Smiling warmly at his words, the priestess admits that is a relief and hands him 2 letters, asking him to please deliver them. Vlad asks to whom, and the priestess specifies the Lord of Dearmar, Lady Alicia Hainel. She explains that she wrote an apology regarding the amber, which she heard was a treasured heirloom of House Hanel. She adds that the letter resting below it is from the Grand Elder. Vlad promises that he will make sure to deliver both safely. The priestess then tells him they will also be sending envoys to Hanel and Dobrikiti soon, as they wish to meet the spirits residing there as well, which Vlad agrees is good to hear. Finally, the priestess hands him a small note, telling him to open it later when he reaches a crossroad. Surprised, Vlad asks what crossroad she means, but she tells him not to worry about it now, because he will just know. Vlad agrees, and the priestess warmly bids him goodbye, stating this is as far as she will see him off. Vlad observes her as her eyes suddenly light up. Vlad mentions that he has been curious about something, and when she asks what it is, he asks if he may know her name, realizing he didn't even know her name until now. Both the priestess and her guards are completely taken aback, and the priestess immediately turns bright red, thoroughly embarrassed as she stammers, asking why he wants her name. Vlad is completely confused, looking over at the guards who are now absolutely furious at his question. Seeing the danger, Gerda whispers quietly to Vlad, warning him that he thinks the captain made some kind of massive mistake. On the inside, Vlad desperately wonders where the hell he went wrong. A few moments later, Vlad explains the awkward situation to Viratis, who chuckles and explains that for elves, the concept of a name is entirely different from human common sense. He warns him that it is a highly sensitive matter, so he must keep that in mind from now on. Vlad apologizes, promising to remember. Viratis then tells him this is as far as they will go to see him off as well, asking if he knows the way back. Vlad thanks them for everything, and Viratis along with the others bow their heads in deep respect, stating they should be the ones thanking him, as Ashrina will never forget the kindness he has shown. Viratis then adopts a serious tone, warning him never to ignore the words the holy maiden has spoken. Vlad promises to keep it in mind, thanking Viratis for worrying about him until the very end. With a firm handshake, Viratis thanks him for protecting the world tree, looking forward to the day they meet again, and Vlad bids them farewell. Vlad mounts his horse, his crest now proudly bearing the symbol of the world tree. He smiles as Viratis and the others wave goodbye, and Vlad can even see the tiny spirits of the world tree bidding him farewell. And so, Vlad's adventure in the elven village concludes, leaving him with a slain dragon, a powerful new set of armor, and a brand new sword. Shortly after riding away, Vlad stops in surprise, remembering her words that he would just know. He mutters that it really is a crossroad, and holding the note given to him by the priestess, he wonders if she is telling him to open it right here. Gerda opens up the map, pointing out that if they go to the right, it leads back the way they came, heading through Tanobo all the way to Dobrikiti. Vlad asks about the middle path, and Gerda replies that it looks like it cuts straight through the central region. Vlad decides they should take the middle path, but Gerda questions him, asking if he is going to choose without checking the left. Vlad asks what lies down that path, and Gerda explains that it connects to the main road leading directly to the empire's capital, Brigantes. Vlad muses that the old man must have gone to the left, remembering how he told Vlad to find him when he goes to the capital. Looking down at the note, Vlad tells himself he will have to look at the Dragon Slayers list later. Unbeknownst to them, the note contains a frantic, capitalized warning. Never. Don't go to the left. The scene shifts dramatically to the empire's capital, Brigantes, under the cover of night. Deep within the narrow, winding city streets, Augustine stands drenched in blood, surrounded by the bodies of several men he has just slaughtered. Catching his breath after the brutal battle, Augustine is suddenly startled when someone speaks from the shadows behind him. The voice remarks that it would have been nice if he had just rested comfortably, asking if that wasn't the very reason they had him retire in the first place. Stunned, Augustine murmurs that he doesn't know what to say, shocked to encounter such an esteemed person in a place like this. Stepping out from the darkness, the mysterious figure is revealed to be none other than Mircea. The chapter opens right where we left off, with Augustine confronting his powerful adversary. He remarks with a dry edge that his opponent must have gone through an immense amount of trouble to come all this way just for a worthless old man. Mircea responds with a cold, dangerous humility, telling him that he is being far too modest and that it is an effort he can easily endure. However, his demeanor quickly shifts as he narrows his eyes at the veteran. Honestly, he adds, it is quite impressive. Even if Augustine is old and his teeth have fallen out, it is remarkable to think he was still hiding such sharp claws. The two rivals lock eyes in an intense, silent stare down. Inside, Augustine is consumed by a bitter regret, lamenting to himself that if he could have taken just one more step, he could have exposed the deep evils of Capsulan to the entire world. Breaking the silence, Mircea signals the soldiers standing behind him with a simple wave of his hand. He remarks that it is nothing grand, but this is the retirement ceremony he has personally prepared for him. On cue, the soldiers draw their swords behind Mircea. Unsheathing his own blade as well, Mircea adds in a heavy, ominous tone that he hopes the arrangement is to his liking. Augustine refuses to go down without a fight, instantly shifting into a combat stance. But as he closely observes Mircea's expression, a sudden wave of perplexity hits him. He stares at the man, noting to himself those striking features: blonde hair, blue eyes, and that unmistakable, innate cruelty. In that split second, Augustine's mind flashes back to the formidable dragon slain by Vlad. Recalling the sight of that fallen beast, a sudden realization strikes him. He confesses to himself that he was completely mistaken. The beginning was noble, but the end was marked by pure cruelty. He recognizes that this power was not an individuality that awakened on its own. Putting two and two together, Augustine connects the dots and arrives at a shocking conclusion. Vlad and Mircea are blood brothers. Suddenly, Mircea unleashes his overwhelming power, moving with supersonic speed and appearing instantly behind Augustine. Augustine spins around, locking eyes with his foe as he completes his final train of thought, realizing that this terrifying force is something passed down through blood, the raw, unstoppable instinct of a predator. But the gap in speed is too vast. Emerging victorious from this brutal clash is Mircea, who lands a devastating, direct blow right to Augustine's chest. The narrative then shifts over to Vlad and his companion as they arrive at a small, secluded settlement. Gerda points toward it, informing Vlad that the place over there is Wisteria Village. Vlad looks over the quiet scenery, noting that it seems nice and peaceful. Gerda expresses his gratitude, but Vlad gently brushes it off. He reminds him that they were already on their way to a nearby city anyway, so it is good to stop by while they are at it. Curious about his companion's past, Vlad asks him how long it has been since he last left his hometown. Gerda takes a moment to think, guessing that it has been about 6 years. Vlad nods thoughtfully, remarking that 6 years is quite a long time. Gerda looks down, admitting that he wanted to return home in true glory after succeeding, but things did not go exactly as planned. Vlad immediately cuts him off with reassuring words, telling him that since he has become a squire of Bayezid, he has indeed succeeded. In dangerous times like these, Vlad adds, just making it back home alive is a grand feat in itself. A smile returns to Gerda's face as he chuckles, agreeing that it is true. He happily mentions that he will just go check if his mother and siblings are doing well, and then he will come right back out. This prompts Vlad to ask if his mother is a good cook. Gerda beams with pride, boasting that of course she is, and that his mother's potato stew is on an entirely different level. Intrigued, Vlad replies that if it is truly that delicious, they should plan to stay for a couple of days. Surprised and overjoyed by the knight's willingness, Gerda stammers, asking if that is really okay. Vlad gives a sly smile, teasing that it all depends entirely on his mother's cooking skills. Whipping around with excitement, Gerda points ahead, exclaiming to his captain that they are almost there. They finally reach the main gates of the village, but their path is instantly blocked by 3 young village guards. The militia members order them to halt, demandingly asking who goes there and what urgent business brings them to their village. Gerda instantly recognizes the leader of the guards and calls him out by name, shouting that it is him, Thompson. However, Thompson acts distant and cold, pretending not to recognize him while bluntly asking who he is. Gerda tries to jog his memory, explaining that he is Gerda from the mill house up on the hill. Thompson feigns sudden realization, repeating the mill house and asking if he means that Gerda. He then asks how many years it has been and demands to know where he has been hiding all this time. Gerda keeps it brief, answering that he has just been traveling here and there. Behind Thompson's back, the other two guards begin whispering quietly to each other. One asks who the traveler is, and the other quietly fills him in, explaining that he is the second son from the mill house. The first guard scoffs under his breath, dismissively calling him a half-wit. From horseback, Vlad catches their shifty behavior and hears every single word. To himself, Vlad notes that a homecoming after 6 years feels incredibly lukewarm, realizing that the villagers are not being welcoming at all. Thompson speaks up again, addressing Gerda. He says that while he is glad Gerda is back after such a long time, he expects him to keep a low profile and leave quickly, warning him that the atmosphere around the village has been incredibly restless lately. Caught off guard, Gerda nervously agrees, stammering that he will likely only stay for a day or two. The guard nods dismissively, telling him that it is fine then, but orders him to stop by the village chief's house to greet him first before granting him entry. Gerda steps past the threshold, quietly agreeing and telling them he will see them later if they have time. Vlad moves to follow right behind him, but to Gerda's absolute shock, the guards suddenly step forward to block the knight's path. Thompson glares up at Vlad, demandingly asking for his name and why he has come to their village. Gerda quickly interjects, panicking and telling Thompson that this person is his esteemed guest. But Thompson fires back coldly, stating that this is exactly why he needs to verify his identity. Gerda loudly orders them to get out of the way and let him pass, but Thompson refuses to back down. Instead, he shifts into a combat stance and points his spear directly at Vlad, demandingly asking one more time for his name. Vlad stares down at the spear tip pointed directly at him. Looking over at Gerda, Vlad thinks to himself that they can forget about a warm welcome. His squire is being completely looked down upon by these peasants. A spark of pure anger ignites within Vlad. His expression hardens into a terrifyingly serious, menacing glare as he clicks his tongue in disgust. Instantly, the atmosphere grows heavy, causing the guards to break out in a cold sweat. In an ominous, echoing tone, Vlad introduces himself, declaring that he is a knight hailing from Bayezid, Vlad. He immediately unleashes a crushing wave of his hidden power directly at them, coldly stating that he hopes someone as lowly as Thompson never dares to ask for his name ever again. Even Vlad's warhorse matches his master's fury, aggressively baring its sharp teeth at the terrified guards. The 3 militia members begin to tremble violently, completely suffocated and unable to breathe under the overwhelming pressure of Vlad's aura. After a few agonizing seconds, Vlad calms his power, finally allowing the suffocating guards to gasp for air. Vlad glares down at them, commanding that if they understand their place, they need to clear the way immediately. Terrified out of their minds, the guards frantically bow their heads, stuttering out apologies and begging for forgiveness. With the path cleared, Vlad majestically rides into the village. As they walk through the streets, a deeply embarrassed Gerda turns to apologize to Vlad, explaining that the guards acted that way because it has been such a long time since he was last home. Instead of scolding him, Vlad catches Gerda completely by surprise by handing him his official faction flag. Vlad looks down at him with an intense, steady gaze, firmly telling Gerda never to forget who he is. He is no longer a wandering mercenary or a mere stable hand. Now, even his smallest actions carry immense weight. Vlad emphasizes his point, reminding him that he carries the solemn duty of a Bayezid squire on his shoulders. Realizing the weight of his lord's words and regaining his resolve, Gerda stands tall, declaring that he will lead the way, Sir Vlad. With a renewed sense of pride, they march forward into the heart of the settlement. Meanwhile, the scene transitions deep inside the village chief's manor. Having just received an urgent report about the newcomers, the village chief gasps in shock, questioning if the second son from the mill house has truly returned. The informant nods nervously, confirming the news and adding that word on the street is that Gerda has somehow become a squire to a genuine knight. Sitting beside the chief, another arrogant young man bursts into mocking laughter. A squire, his foot, he scoffs loudly, asking his father if he actually believed the ridiculous words of a known half-wit. The informant speaks up hesitantly, admitting that while the claim is certainly suspicious, the traveler might genuinely be a knight. He highlights that the militia reported a highly unusual and terrifying atmosphere at the front gates. The village chief rubs his chin, deep in thought, noting gloomily that Gerda chose to return home with a powerful knight during such a restless period of all times. The informant continues to stoke the flames of suspicion, warning that there is no telling what kind of catastrophic trouble that Gerda Fellow might cause again. He suggests that it might be wise to send a mercenary group to keep a strict eye on them, reminding the chief that they currently have a mercenary group dispatched by Baron Rosmitz staying within their territory. Hearing this, the chief's arrogant son slams his hand down, yelling at the informant to stop talking such utter nonsense. He angrily argues that if they waste an elite mercenary group's time on a pathetic nobody like Gerda, the Baron would look down upon his father for being incompetent. The village chief ponders for a moment, agreeing that there is likely no need to inform the Baron about such a trivial matter. Seizing the opportunity, his son turns to his father with an ugly, malicious smirk. "Father," he requests quietly, "leave this entire matter to me." His eyes gleam with a cruel intent as he concludes that he has something he absolutely intends to take back from that bastard anyway.